In her eyes, Yunwoo must be the human who had despicably snatched her baby. Even tearing Yunwoo to pieces wouldn't be enough to dissolve her anger. Watching that murderous phoenix swooping towards her, Yunwoo hiding in dense foliage was terrified by the intense killing aura. Without a single moment's hesitation, Yunwoo took a flying leap and shot towards the chaotic battleground. Clang! Seeing that Yunwoo was taking her to the battleground, little Reek in her arms was very excited. It raised its head and let out another piercing phoenix squeak. "You brats still dare to squeak. It was all your fault." Feeling that the phoenix was pursuing her hotly and spewing flames, Yunwoo was terribly anxious. She enveloped herself in wind element and started swishing around aimlessly on the battlefield. Little Reek in her arms had no intention of correcting its mistakes. Instead, as if excited by this chase, it started squeaking again. Yunwoo itched to strangle it with her bare hands. She subconsciously stretched out her hand and directly clamped it on its little mouth, which had small zombie fangs revealing outside the lips. On seeing this, the female phoenix widened her eyes and let out an extremely angry squeak which resounded around the whole battlefield. "Human, let go of my child. Give me my child back." The sound waves of the female phoenix's roar was so powerful that Yunwoo nearly spat blood, a sharp pain in her eardrums. Little Reek was enjoying this very much. Though Yunwoo was covering its mouth, it was happily waving its two little claws which were not too sharp, its chubby little legs kicking around constantly. It looked like a puppy swimming. But in outsider's sight, it seemed as if Yunwoo kidnapped this little guy which was madly struggling. Clash! The female phoenix let out an extremely angry shriek which made the welkin ring, as if even wind and clouds were changing their directions due to this scream. The female phoenix started spewing lances of flames, but she didn't dare to hit Yunwoo for fear that the flame might hurt her child. Flustered, Yunwoo kept rushing madly. Wherever there was a way, she took it. The battlefield was so vast that she had no idea which part of it she was in. However, at this moment, all fighting on the battleground stopped. Both magic beasts and humans concentrated all their attention on that kidnapped phoenix baby and that girl in black, who was fleeing on the battlefield. Who was she? However, no matter who she was, anybody who saw her coming in their direction dodged aside as quick as possible. Because wherever she went, flames spewed by the female phoenix flying in mid-air would soon follow. Those who failed to dodge in time, no matter magic beasts or humans, were instantly toasted. Seeing that all magic beasts and humans were avoiding her, which left her nowhere to hide, Yunwoo felt resigned and depressed. "Give me my child back." In mid-air, the phoenix was hotly pursuing her, breathing fire, eyes wide with rage. Yunwoo felt that sooner or later she would become a roast human if things kept going this way. After flicking a glance at the little guy in her arms, which was happily waving its claws and kicking its chubby legs, she began to wonder whether she should just return this guy to that phoenix. Though it was her indentured beast, this little guy's fighting capability was zero, and now she was about to be exhausted to death trying to flee from its mother who was chasing her and trying to kill her, but this little guy was having so much fun. Did it have any idea that it was indentured to her? It seemed as if this guy regarded her as a nanny. Thinking of this, Yunwoo, who had been swishing around rapidly, abruptly stopped. Seeing that the phoenix was spewing another pike of fire towards her, Yunwoo grabbed little Reek and lifted it up above her head. "Wait!" Yunwoo, who was panting heavily, let out a cry which resounded through this bloody battlefield. Fortunately, the phoenix stopped in time. Otherwise, the giggling little guy, which had no idea what was going on, and which thought that Yunwoo was just teasing it, would have been toasted. What a vicious human. The female phoenix transformed herself into a woman, an angry and murderous look on her face, glaring at Yunwoo who was using her child as a shield. Vicious? What kind of vicious thing did she do? This little Reek had devoured 1/3 of the primal fire. There was no way the flames spewed by her could hurt it. However, Yunwoo scorned to argue with her. She raised the chubby little guy in her hands, as if she was doing weightlifting. "You've been demanding the return of your son all along, so I'll just give it back to you." Actually, I've been meaning to return it to you all the time, but you yelled at me and tried to kill me the moment you saw me, which made my heart lurch, so I started running, Yunwoo said in a loud voice, bold and straight. However, judging by the look on her face, she wasn't scared at all. On hearing this, the female phoenix went even angrier, and even those standing in the distance could sense her anger. A red figure flashed down and snatched that little guy from Yunwoo's hands as quick as she could. In a seemingly relieved voice, Yunwoo said, "All right. Now you got your kid back. For the record, whatever it is that is going to happen in the future has nothing to do with me." After saying this, with a twitch of her hand, Yunwoo turned around and left. She did this in such an elegant and unrestrained manner that anybody living in modern society, had they seen this, would be reminded of that sentence in a famous poem, "I waved my hand and brought no cloud with me." However, she had just taken one step forward and the leg behind was still on the ground when something grabbed it. She lowered her head and took a look. She saw that little Reek was tightly holding on to her pant leg and staring fixedly up at her with its big round eyes filled with tears, a pitiful look on its face. "Mom!" Its babyish, tearful voice was quivering, as if it was a child whose parents were abandoning it. Yunwoo was speechless with embarrassment, her lips twitching violently. She was really not a wet nurse. She had no breast milk for this little guy. Would anybody please take this little fatty away? However, the phoenix darted a murderous look at Yunwoo when she heard the little guy calling her mom. The look on the phoenix's face instantly switched from anger to iciness, and there was intense killing intent at the bottom of her eyes. If her gaze were able to kill, Yunwoo would probably have been torn to pieces by now. "Reek, get your claws off me," Yunwoo hurriedly darkened her face and thundered for fear that the phoenix might take action. But little Reek ignored her yell and her angry face. It not only grabbed her pant leg with its claws but also clamped its chubby little legs around her shank like a Chinese donut. Pouting its little mouth, it called in a tearful voice, "Mom, Mom." This brat still dared to call her mom. Any woman who saw her child regarding another woman as mother would get furious and try to kill that woman. A murderous, wrathful look flashed across the phoenix's eyes. This time, Yunwoo's heart really lurched. There was a saying which said that inviting a god to one's home is easy, but having the god leave is difficult. This little guy had come to her on its own account, why was it still so difficult to have it go back home? Beneath the murderous gaze of the phoenix, Yunwoo was horrified. Eventually, resigned, she secretly clenched her teeth, stretched her hand into her sleeve and fished out a big, red fruit out of her storage space. In outsiders' eyes, it seemed as if the fruit had been stored in her sleeve. "Here you are. This is the last one I got. Take this and go with your own mother. Don't follow me. Understand?" The moment Yunwoo took out the crimson fruit, a gratifying and refreshing fragrance spread out. A single sniff of it made people feel comfortable and relaxed. The moment the phoenix saw the fruit taken out by Yunwoo, her pupils contracted noticeably and a flash of amazement crossed the bottom of her eyes. A crimson ambrosian fruit? She was merely a human. How come she had a crimson ambrosian fruit? Crimson ambrosian fruits contained concentrated fire element. Ambrosian fruit trees blossomed every 1,000 years, and it took them an extra millennium to yield, so this kind of fruit was very precious and very rare even in the realm of divine beasts, not to mention in the mortal realm. For fire-attributed magic beasts, crimson ambrosian fruit was very nourishing. It could also help a magic beast make a breakthrough when the beast was evolving. If a fire-attributed human ingested this kind of fruit, not only would his or her fire-attributed constitution be strengthened, but also his or her power would double. Crimson ambrosian fruits were especially precious for human alchemists, because even a single droplet of crimson ambrosian fruit juice could add amazing property to the product. Surprisingly, this human gave a whole crimson ambrosian fruit to her child. The killing intent in her eyes unnoticeably abated to a large extent. However, what she didn't know was that Yunwoo, who had poor discernment, merely felt that this fruit was refreshing and crisp. Back then she gobbled down over 10 fruits to fill her belly. She didn't feel anything unusual after eating them, so she didn't think much. Of course, Yunwoo took all the fruits from that tree and stored them in her storage space, the total number of which was 50 to 60 at the smallest, regardless of their colors. So she generously gave one to this little guy and didn't feel that it was a painful loss at all. Little Reek was indifferent to Yunwoo's generosity. It clung onto her pant leg, raised its chubby face and looked at Yunwoo, shaking its head, big eyes full of tears. No. Yunwoo's lips twitched. Did this brat by any chance feel that one fruit was not enough? It had indeed seen her take all those fruits. She stretched her hand into the other sleeve, produced another big fruit which was blue, then passed it to the little guy, saying, "This is the last one. Behave yourself. Don't be too greedy." The phoenix's pupils contracted again as she saw the fruit. Astonishment gleamed in her eyes. A water ambrosian fruit? This human also had a water ambrosian fruit. But Little Reek still shook its head, saying, "No." Finally, Yunwoo's face went angry. She glared at it. "You brat. What is it that you want exactly? Why did it cling on to her when its natural mother was right beside it? Did she really look like a wet nurse so much?" Yunwoo was very resigned and depressed. However, she still stooped down, roughly grabbed it, raised it and stuffed the two big fruits into the arms of the little guy, which was pouting and looking at her with cute, pitiful and fluid eyes. "Stay with your mom and behave yourself. Someday, when you're weaned, I'll come back to pick you up," said Yunwoo, as if coaxing a kid. After saying this, with a twitch of her hand, she directly threw it at the phoenix, regardless of whether it had understood or not. "Leave here right now. And remember to teach it how to behave, so it won't mistake someone else as a wet nurse. Doesn't it have any idea that will embarrass others? I'm still single." After hearing Yunwoo's words, the phoenix also felt depressed. Her child chose a human over her, and so many people saw this. She was terribly embarrassed. But this human sounded as if she was the one to be blamed for all this. And she couldn't even contradict her, which was very annoying. But the phoenix didn't hesitate. As if worried that her child might follow this human and leave her, she carried Little Reek, leaped upwards, turned into a fiery red phoenix and flew away immediately. However, before leaving, she raised her head and let out a commanding, piercing scream which instantly rippled through the whole battleground. Clang! On hearing the piercing scream, all magic beasts on the battlefield, both injured ones and unharmed ones, quickly retreated into the forest like a tide. Before long, not a single magic beast could be seen on the battlefield, except for those dead ones on the ground. Yunwoo looked in the direction of the phoenix's receding figure. When she withdrew her gaze, a relieved look appeared on her face. How could she not feel relieved when that little thing that kept calling her mom was no longer around? She leisurely turned around and planned to return to Luo City. But the moment she turned around, she saw hundreds of thousands of troops in front of her, eyes of every one of whom were fixed on her. In those eyes gleamed surprise, curiosity, and puzzlement. They were all sizing her up. Being watched by so many people, Yunwoo furrowed her eyebrows. At this moment, an officer followed by a couple of soldiers walked up to her. "May I ask you something, lady?" Yunwoo flicked a glimpse at the man who was barely in his 30s, crossed her arms across her chest and said in a languid, bland voice, "What is it? Who are you?" "Was it you who stole the egg of the phoenix?" the officer queried in a commanding voice, sizing her up with piercing eyes. It sounded more like an interrogation than a query. Yunwoo peered at the clothing that officer was wearing and believed that he was probably a deputy general. She curved her lips in a half-smile. "Deputy General, why am I having this feeling that you're not asking me but interrogating me? What's going on here? You want to interrogate me on this battlefield? Did I kill anybody or burn anybody's house? Or did I rob your family members?" On hearing this, that deputy general frowned and his face slightly darkened. "Lady, in a circumstance like this, you're still in the mood for joking? Do you have any idea how many residents and our soldiers got killed because of what you did?" After hearing this, Yunwoo lifted her eyebrows, but a flash of apathy crossed the bottom of her eyes. Because of what she did. Had she done anything? Even if she had, given her manner and style, it was not a deputy general's place to interrogate her like interrogating a prisoner, not to mention that she hadn't done anything. Besides, she didn't know about these things at all. So Deputy General is telling me that I should have a sad look on my face because of all those people who got killed, aren't you? It is just that there's one thing that I don't quite understand. Did those people's deaths have anything to do with me? Did their deaths have anything to do with you? Do you know that the very reason why they were killed was because you stole the phoenix egg? Yunwoo pretended that light had suddenly dawned on her. She raised her eyes and looked at that deputy general. Oh. Now I understand. So Deputy General is saying it is those who stole the phoenix egg that deserve death penalty. But I want to ask Deputy General, how can you be so sure that I was the one who stole the phoenix egg? I mean, even you and these hundreds of thousands of troops couldn't steal the egg from the phoenix. You actually think that a little girl like me, whose arms and legs are so thin, somehow managed to steal the egg from that divine beast? Does Deputy General by any chance think that all these troops of yours are just a bunch of good-for-nothing fatheads who can't even compare with a little girl? Or does Deputy General think that I'm a reincarnation of some god who is more powerful than all these troops combined? If the latter is the case, that will be a huge compliment I don't deserve, and I will feel flattered and honored. It seemed as if Chen Ling hadn't expected that this black-faced little girl was so eloquent and cunning. After hearing her words, he was at a loss what to say, because it would always be his fault no matter how he answered those rhetorical questions. Instantly, he felt embarrassed and was unable to find a way out of this awkward situation. Deputy General Chen, General-in-Chief Yun asked you to invite this lady, but you started chatting with her. This is not the right thing to do. However, right at this moment, a mild, amused voice came. A tall and straight figure not far away was walking towards them at a steady pace. The man was about 35 or 36, looking refined, elegant and very amiable, a big smile on his face. He was wearing a gray robe instead of a military uniform, which made him seem like a teacher. Please pardon him for his impertinence, lady. Deputy General Chen has always been like this. If his words offended you, please allow me to apologize to you on behalf of him. But our General-in-Chief would like to have a talk with you. Would you mind walking a few steps? His voice was mild and elegant. Though his words were polite, his attitude was neither humble nor haughty. Because of this, Yunwoo couldn't help sizing him up. Just now, when he was walking over, his steps was sure-footed, and his chi was stable, which indicated that he was probably a kung fu expert, but he managed to conceal his warrior's chi with his cultured and elegant appearance. Even Yunwoo could barely detect it. By no means was he a common person. Judging from his clothing, words, and manners, he probably was a military counselor, and his status was probably pretty high. Now that Lord Counselor put it this way, I'm actually interested in meeting this General-in-Chief Yun you mentioned. Yunwoo withdrew her gaze, curved her lips and said. On hearing her calling him Lord Counselor, when you couldn't help lifting his eyebrows. He watched Yunwoo and a flash of amusement crossed the bottom of his eyes. How piercing this girl's eyes were. She actually guessed his identity after briefly peering at him. This way, please, lady. Seeing that when you led the way himself, all those soldiers nearby were amazed. Counselor Wen was invited back by General-in-Chief himself. Even General-in-Chief was respectful to him. But now he was leading the way for this black-faced little girl. Chen Ling's face was a little sudden. Watching Yunwoo, who was leisurely, languid and didn't have the right attitude that she should have when she was about to meet the General-in-Chief, he felt a little uncomfortable. But he didn't say anything, following them with a sullen face. After a while, they walked through ranks of soldiers and finally arrived at a broad open space at the rear. Corpses in this area had been sketchily cleared off. After bringing Yunwoo to this place, when you took a step forward and said very respectfully to a heavily armed, tall figure who was standing among some officers, General, she's here. That tall figure, who was standing with his back to Yunwoo, turned around after hearing his words. This man was nobody else but Yunlingyi, the general-in-chief Yun of Zhou Kingdom. Originally, Yunlingyi was in a border city in the south. When magic beasts brought chaos to this border city in the west, in order to ensure the safety of the seventh prince who was garrisoning this border city, the emperor issued an order and dispatched him to the west to deal with magic beasts. Yunwoo had been in this exotic world for more than half a year, but this was the first time that she had seen her natural father. He was wearing military uniform covered by silver armor, barely in his 40s. His face was a mixture of seriousness and apathy. In his piercing eyes gleamed strictness and solemnity specific to servicemen. After flicking a glance at Yunwoo, whose face was black, he briefly frowned. But the look on his face was still serious and apathetic. In a cold, deep voice, he asked, "You were the one who stole the phoenix egg? Are you aware of the crime you committed?" She was supposed to have some special feeling since this was the first time that she had met her natural father. But Yunwoo didn't feel anything. Instead, she took an instant dislike to him on hearing the first remark he made. "What do you mean, General-in-Chief Yun?" Yunwoo cast a cold, languid glance in his direction, saying, "Does General-in-Chief Yun by any chance also think that I was the one who deliberately stole the phoenix egg? That I'm the cause of this war? You were not. I never expected that General-in-Chief Yun, the supreme commander of Zhou Kingdom's armies, is also so stupid." The latter half of her remark was very sharp. She stared back at him, the look in her eyes just as apathetic. Faces of other generals changed as they heard this. Chen Ling's face abruptly fell as he heard her words. He thundered, "Little girl, do you have any idea who you're talking to? How dare you be so impertinent? I can mete out punishment to you according to military laws for what you have just said." Yunwoo was not afraid at all. Instead, she curved her lips and turned her head aside, saying, "Deputy General Chen, those were quite big words. General-in-Chief didn't say anything yet but you started yelling. Do you think that your status is higher than his? You. Bullshit." Chen Ling's face was dark with rage after he heard her words. What an eloquent girl. This girl really wouldn't let anybody get the best of her. When you had been silently observing her all along. Right at this moment when Chen Ling was so angry that he was about to pull out his saber, when you hurriedly walked forward and said mildly with a smile, "That's enough, Deputy General Chen. Stay out of this. Let General-in-Chief handle it. You're taking her side." "I'm not taking anybody's side. But if you keep doing this, you'll only end up embarrassed." When you deliberately lowered his voice when he said the latter half of his remarks. Though she was merely fabricating it when she said that Deputy General Chen wanted to arrogate himself the right to mete out punishment, there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers watching this. If he really did something on an impulse, there would be no way back. After hearing this, Chen Ling was speechless with anger for quite a while. He darted a ferocious look at Yunwoo and took his leave silently with a twitch of his hand. Yunwoo slightly squinted her purple eyes, flicked a glance at Wen Yu and then briefly sized him up. This counselor had been smiling all along. He seemed unthreatening but was absolutely far more sophisticated and smarter than that deputy general. He was a typical, smiling tiger, outwardly kind but inwardly cruel. However, Yunwoo had no interest in competing with him. Now that she had seen this so-called father, Yunwoo didn't want to waste any time continuing to talk with them. "You don't have to deal with this any longer. Now that you suspect I was the one who did that, just take it as the truth. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to take my leave." After saying this blandly, Yunwoo turned around, planning to leave. However, Yunlingyi's apathetic, commanding voice came from behind. "Now that you admitted you did that, I can't let you leave. Guards, take her." On hearing the order, soldiers nearby flooded over and solidly surrounded Yunwoo. Their wicked-looking swords reflected cold gleams. Yunwoo's eyes swept around with iciness gleaming at the bottom of them. She turned her head back and looked in the direction of Yunlingyi, whose face was sullen all along. "What are you doing? You want to arrest me?" You're the cause of this war and responsible for the deaths of so many people. No matter what the reason was, I have to escort you back to the capital. His Majesty will decide how to punish you, Yunlungi said apathetically and seriously, watching her with an expressionless face. May I ask what kind of punishment His Majesty will mete out to me? Beheading me? Or, condemning all my family members and relatives to death? Yunwu lifted her eyebrows and asked. Yunlungi made no response. A general beside him said in a gruff voice, so many people died because of you. Even the deaths of all your family members and relatives won't be enough to atone for your crime. On hearing this, Yunwu couldn't help bursting into laugh in which there was a tone of inexplicable sarcasm. What are you laughing about? Staring at her, when you frowned. Her laugh confused everybody present. Under the circumstances, she still dared to laugh like that? Did she lose her sanity because of overwhelming fear? Troops and officers around her thought. Yunwu stopped laughing and a flash of coldness crossed the bottom of her eyes. I'm actually anticipating the day when all my family members and relatives would be condemned to death. Watching her, Yunlungi kept having this feeling that the way she looked at him was somewhat strange. But he still yelled in a cold and serious tone, take her away. Soldiers immediately started closing in on Yunwu. Wait, General-in-Chief. About this matter, would you please allow me to express my opinion first? When you said. Yunlungi flicked a glance at him with a cold, sullen look on his face, saying nothing. However, when you spoke again, Yunwu curved her lips in a smile and said blandly, Lord Counselor, there is no need for you to make any more remarks. General-in-Chief Yun is determined to uphold the dignity of the law. How could he show mercy on me whose family members and relatives should be condemned to death? Was she saying that she didn't want anybody to intercede for her? That she'd already resigned herself to her fate? Lady, General-in-Chief didn't mean that. But I was born hard to kill. Even if God wants to take my life, he has to ask for my permission first, not to mention your emperor. Her voice was bland, but there was wild arrogance in it. What a haughty girl. How dare she say such treasonable and heretical words? She's so conceited. Tell me about it. This girl should be put to the sword on the spot. On hearing her words, all those generals around couldn't help mumbling, their faces very serious. How dare this black-faced girl make such remarks? Isn't she too self-important? With a sullen and angry look on his face, Chen Ling abruptly thundered, what an arrogant girl. I'd like to find out whether it is because you're hard to kill or because you're incurably stubborn that you dare to be so haughty. He had been forbearing all along. If he didn't teach this arrogant girl a lesson, his anger would never dissolve. He mobilized Tier 7 late-stage fighting spirit and shot towards Yunwu like greased lightning. Yunwu curved her lips in a sneer, an icy look in her eyes. When the sword was swung at her, with a single movement of her feet and a sudden twitch of her figure, she instantly disappeared into thin air on the spot. The sword missed its target. Chen Ling was stunned. Where was she? With a frown on his face, Chen Ling turned his head back and looked around. But all of a sudden, a stabbing pain accompanied by cold was felt in his neck, and with that he smelled a faint smell of blood. I say this a lot, whoever wants to kill me will die before me. Deputy General Chen, do you think I should take you life first? A cold voice came from beside his ear. All Chen Ling's movements froze, surprise gleaming in his eyes. Horror and puzzlement rose inside him. She was so fast. He didn't know when she appeared at all. Standing beside him, Yunwu was holding a cold dagger against his neck. The skin of his neck was slit by the sharp blade, beads of blood oozing out of the shallow cut. In those troops' eyes, Yunwu's figure seemed to have appeared out of thin air, which was weird and astonishing. But when they collected themselves, those generals around started yelling. You little girl are so bold. Let go of Deputy General Chen. How dare you be so unruly in front of the General-in-Chief? The crime you committed is beyond atonement. Let him go. While those generals were yelling, Yunlingyi's face also went cold and sullen. Let go of him. Abducting a general will double your guilt. Release him immediately or else I'll make you too. On hearing this, Yunwu secretly sneered. She raised her cold eyes and looked at Yunlingyi. General-in-Chief, you convicted me of a crime doubly serious so easily? I might be scared to death. But, I'd like to ask a question. This deputy general of yours was aiming to kill from the very beginning. Was I supposed to stand still and let him stab his sword into my heart? That's the military discipline you've been talking about. In her last incarnation, she was an orphan who had no idea what it felt like to have a father. During this incarnation, she had a father. Though she had never expressed anything to him, deep down in her heart, she still had a trace of expectation. As a result, when that man mentioned General-in-Chief Yun, she agreed to come here to meet her so-called father. It was not until she was disillusioned that she found that coldness and anger was inexplicably bubbling in her. When he made those remarks with a cold face regardless of the facts, Yunwu felt even more disappointed. You were the cause of this war, and you also made impertinent remarks. Deputy General Chen's trying to arrest you was entirely reasonable, Yunlingyi said coldly, watching her with an icy look. Entirely reasonable. Haha. Yunwu laughed, as if having just heard the funniest joke. During the previous fight, Chen-Ling was aiming at her vital parts. If he hit the target, she would have been disabled, if not killed. All generals present were kung fu practitioners, so they were all aware of this. The frown on Wen Yu's face grew deeper as he watched Yunwu laughing, as if he was pondering over something and about to find out something. General-in-Chief, would you please calm down and hear me out? At this moment, Wen Yu spoke again. Counselor Wen, there's no need for you to intercede on her behalf. She threatened a general with a dagger in front of so many troops. If she gets away without being severely punished, how is General-in-Chief supposed to establish his authority and lead the army in the future? That's true. She did this in front of so many soldiers. How could we let this criminal get away unpunished? General-in-Chief, you don't have to do it yourself. Let me teach this girl a lesson. A general in middle stage of Tier 8 stepped forward. Yunwu just stood there and coldly watched them. When she saw Yunlingyi nodding, Yunwu curved her lips in an extremely cold smile, as if she had finally given up her fond hope. Yunlingyi, the General-in-Chief, you really broadened my horizons today. The moment she finished the last word, her dagger, which had been against Chen-Ling's neck, was swished towards the ground before Yunlingyi like a beam of cold light. Meanwhile, before anybody could react, she concentrated her strength in her palm and threw a palm attack on the back of Chen-Ling's right shoulder. Crack! With a faint sound of bones snapping, Chen-Ling was sent flying away like a piece of rag. Yunlingyi's face instantly changed. He mobilized his Tier 9 late-stage fighting spirit, moved sideways and caught Chen-Ling who was thrown away. Meanwhile, he threw a palm strike at Yunwu. But Yunwu's figure weirdly flashed away and dodged Yunlingyi's strike. Yunlingyi, from now on, the relation between you and me will be like that dagger. The chilly voice was still resounding around the battlefield where hundreds of thousands of troops were standing, but Yunwu had leaped upwards, turned into a whirlwind and shot into the sky like a beam of black light. What kind of speed could be deemed fast? People who saw this scene knew the answer. Amazed, thousands of troops raised their heads and saw that the black light flashed across the sky and soon disappeared into the distance. At this moment, Chen-Ling's pained groan was heard. Ouch! My hand! It was at this moment that those soldiers and officers collected themselves. Get the medic here. After the order was issued, a medic hurriedly came. However, an amazed and solemn look appeared on the medic's face after he performed a medical examination. His bones broke under that palm strike. I'm afraid Deputy General Chen won't be able to use this arm again. Chen-Ling, who was sweating buckets due to the sharp pain, paled visibly on hearing the medic's words and almost sat up from the ground. What? What did you say? I'm disabled. As if panic-stricken, Chen-Ling said emotionally, "No. I want to fight side by side with the General-in-Chief. I can't lose my arm. Medic, help me, please." "Deputy General Chen, I'm really sorry, but there's nothing I can do." Alas. On hearing Chen-Ling's begging, the medic sighed and shook his head. "Medic, is the wound in Deputy General Chen's arm really incurable?" Yunlingyi furrowed his forehead. He had never expected that girl was so ruthless. The medic stood up, walked forward and shook his head. "General-in-Chief, in some cases, broken bones can be cured. But all the bones of his arm fractured. Even if he is cured, I'm afraid he would never be able to use a sword again." Hearing this, Chen-Ling instantly felt as if he was thrown into hell. Despair glinting in his eyes, he clamped his left hand on his right arm, which was aching intensely, and which he could control no more. As a serviceman, without his arm, how was he supposed to fight? How was he supposed to serve his country? Wasn't he now good for nothing? Anger surged through all generals present as they heard the medic's words. That black-faced girl disabled Deputy General Chen. She's so vicious. God damn it. We should have stabbed her to death just now. What a ruthless girl. Yunlingyi's face was also sullen. He had seen his deputy general disabled before his very eyes, but there was nothing he could do. He clenched his fists tightly. "General, look at that dagger," Wenyu suddenly said in a deep, surprised voice. Looking in the direction that he was pointing in, those generals found that the dagger was still sticking upright in the ground. What was the fuss about? "It's just a dagger." However, before the general's voice died away. Crack! A faint snap was heard, and with that the dagger, along with its hilt, broke into numerous pieces which then scattered onto the ground. All pieces were very even. One needed precise control of one's spiritual power to do this. Which one of these generals present was capable of making a dagger break into even pieces like that? Even Yunlingyi probably couldn't do that. At this moment, a breeze blew by. Beneath the gaze of all people present, those pieces of the dagger turned into wind element and instantly disappeared into the air. Everybody's pupils abruptly contracted, astonishment gleaming in them. That was not a real dagger. It was a wind blade formed of wind element. How was that possible? She actually condensed wind element into a tangible weapon. Who was that black-faced girl exactly? A look of terror flashed across those generals' faces. Yunlingyi frowned, as if he also hadn't expected that dagger was formed of wind element. Surprised as Wenyu was, he was more puzzled. "General-in-Chief, judging from that girl's words, there seems to be some kind of relation between you two. You really have no impression of her." She was related to him. Yunlingyi ransacked his memory but didn't find anything concerning that girl. However, the last remark she made before she left was still reverberating in his mind. "The relation between you and me will be like that dagger. In the depths of the maple ridge." Yunwu was unaware of what kind of trouble the two ambrosian fruits she gave to the little guy had caused the phoenix. When the old man and the middle-aged man appeared in mid-air above the nest of the phoenix, the furious and aggressive chi given off by them sent all magic beasts nearby lie prostrate on the ground, trembling in fear. Inside the cavern, the little, chubby reek was misbehaving itself. It kept climbing out of its place and the phoenix had to bring it back again and again. It also kept calling, "Mom." And it was very obvious that it was not calling the phoenix, which was why there was a sullen look on her face. She had a faint feeling that there was some kind of bond between her son and that black-faced girl, and somehow she found that bond very familiar. As if. While the phoenix was contemplating in suspicion, a potent chi suddenly surged into the cavern with fierce momentum. "Who is it?" The phoenix's face darkened. She casually threw little Reek onto the body of the spotted snake on the side and then instantly flashed out of the cavern. The moment she went out of the cavern, the phoenix sensed a chi filled with fury and frowned. "Who are you? Why did you come to my phoenix cavern?" On the sight of the phoenix, the old man and the middle-aged man standing in midair smelled a gratifying and refreshing fruit fragrance given off by her, anger bubbling inside them. Was it you, a phoenix descended into our realm, who committed theft in our orchard? The middle-aged man's voice was very deep and angry. Orchard? Which orchard? I don't know what you are talking about. Humans are not welcome in this area. Leave immediately or else I'll be hard on you. After what had happened to her son, the phoenix was exceptionally antipathetic to humans. However, on hearing her words, the middle-aged man in midair, who recalled that their precious fruits had been stolen twice, instantly became furious. Humph. Be hard on us? I'd like to find out who is going to be hard on who. The moment he finished the last word, with a whooshing sound, the middle-aged man flashed down like greased lightning. In the blink of an eye, a red figure and a gray figure engaged each other and an intense fight abruptly started outside the cavern, potent killing aura spreading outwards. All magic beasts nearby were scared and hurriedly fled away from this area. The two figures violently impacted on each other, generating a massive undulation of power that almost quaked the whole mountain. Inside the cavern, Little Reek, which was carefully wrapped in the spotted snake's body, opened its mouth, revealing two sharp fangs, and bit the spotted snake. Hiss, hiss, the spotted snake struggled in sharp pain. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Little Reek slid down the spotted snake's body and ran towards the outside of the cavern. Hiss, hiss, on seeing this, the spotted snake was horrified and hastily pursued the little guy, heedless of the two small bloody holes in its body. However, Little Reek had just reached the entrance of the cave when its chubby little body was immobilized by a force shot down from midair. The old man standing in midair twitched his sleeve and with that Little Reek swished towards him like a ball and landed in his palm. A hybrid? I've lived most of my life, yet this is the first time that I've seen this kind of weird little thing. The old man lifted his eyebrows and mumbled after flicking a glance at the half-human little guy in his hand. Little Reek was imprisoned in a transparent ball formed of energy. It kept scratching on the inside of the energy ball with its sharp claws, making scratchy sounds. Unfortunately, all its efforts were in vain. Eventually, it stopped, tilted its little head and watched the white-bearded old man. When the old man was sizing it up, it was also affectedly peering at him. As the old man murmured, it also imitatively lifted its little eyebrows and murmured, "Old man. Ugly. Bad looking, bad looking." On hearing this, the old man was stunned, as if he had never expected that this little guy not only could imitate him but also was very good at this. However, when he smelled the scent of ambrosian fruits given off by it, he furrowed his forehead. It seemed that this phoenix was indeed the one who had stolen those fruits in the orchard. His thousands of years' work had been stolen. How could he not be angry? How could he be indifferent? But surprisingly, apart from the scent of ambrosian fruits, he also sensed a trace of a summoner's chi in this little guy. It had been indentured to a summoner. The old man couldn't help sizing it up. When he finally confirmed this, a flash of surprise crossed the bottom of his eyes. A summoner had really been born on this Shenzhou continent? "Give me my child back," the phoenix thundered in anger. The red figure that had been fighting with the middle-aged man furiously launched an attack on the old man, trying to snatch her son from the old man's hand. A cold look flashed across the bottom of the old man's eyes which had witnessed vicissitudes of his life. With a twitch of his hand, a surge of potent power hurtled at the phoenix and threw her away. Ah! The phoenix was hit by that weird, potent power and thrown back, almost totally powerless to fight back. When a magic beast transformed itself into a human, its fighting capability would become slightly weaker, but she shouldn't have been too weak to fight back. There was only one plausible explanation for this: the opponent was too powerful. Who was this old man exactly? Who are you exactly? Why did you take my son away from me? The phoenix glared at the old man standing in midair, her eyes wide with rage. If you want your son back, bring me that summoner whom your son is indentured to. This was the only remark that the old man made. After saying this, he slowly turned around and left. He had just turned around, but in the blink of an eye, his figure was hundreds of miles away, and the next second, his figure disappeared into the distance. She wanted to pursue him but found that he was nowhere to be seen. On seeing this, with a twitch of his figure, the middle-aged man also instantly disappeared into thin air on the spot. Watching this, the phoenix was both angry and concerned. But what angered her even more was that her son had been indentured to a human. She recalled that black-faced girl. Ah! Human. When I catch you, I'll tear you to pieces, a furious, piercing cry instantly rippled through the whole forest. Flocks of birds were alarmed and scattered in all directions. Yunwoo had no idea what had just happened in the depths of the maple ridge. And she certainly didn't know that her undesigned actions were going to generate a series of troublesome consequences. The moment Yunwoo left the battlefield, she landed in a lonely spot outside a border city. Because she had faintly felt that two figures seemed to have been pursuing her. It seemed that the two assassins had really been lying in ambush outside the forest, waiting for her to show up. It was just that for some reason, they didn't launch an attack on her but just followed her. As Yunwoo landed on the ground, she put on a black robe, enveloped herself in wind element and with a twitch of her figure, she instantly disappeared into thin air on the spot. Yunwoo felt that the 7 elemental powers in her body had considerably strengthened after she had that long sleep in that bottomless pit and then drank blood of that tiger condor, and her speed had also become more than twice as fast as before. Though she still wasn't powerful enough to kill those two assassins, since she was merely an early stage of Tier 7, fleeing from them was an easy job to her. After entering the border city, that black figure directly went into the busiest downtown area. Unexpectedly, because of her black face, she was always the center of everybody's attention wherever she went. Resigned, Yunwoo quickly walked into an inn. Beneath the eccentric gaze of the innkeeper and guests, she ordered a room and had a bellman bring her some hot water. Back then in that pit, all her hair had been soaked in that little brat's saliva and become very sticky. Though it was dry now, she still felt very uncomfortable. Now that she was in an inn, she decided to do some washing first. When Yunwoo looked into the bronze mirror and saw that face as black as that of an African native, she was nearly scared to death. How did she end up like this? That kind of black gave people this feeling that it was her real skin color. Even her lips were also black. Yunwoo hurriedly rubbed her face only to find that the color didn't change a little bit. She was horrified, her heart pounding. Soon, the bellman sent a basin of hot water to her room. Yunwoo dipped her hands into hot water, rubbed her face again and was relieved. Fortunately, the black dirt could be dissolved by hot water. Otherwise, her life would have been frightened out of her. She couldn't imagine life with a face as black as that. After having the bellman change the hot water 5 times, Yunwoo finally managed to wash her face and hair clean. Her skin regained its former delicacy and whiteness, her black hair glossy. Added to them her otherworldly purple eyes, she looked amazingly charming, making people's hearts palpitate, which could be proved by the bellman who was standing at the doorway, transfixed with shock. Her eyes were so wide that it seemed as if the 2 eyeballs were about to drop out of the sockets, and his mouth almost watered, too. "Bellman, if you've had your fill, please close the door for me." It was not until Yunwoo spoke that the bellman collected himself. A look of awkwardness flashed across the bellman's face. As if embarrassed, he scratched his head and said, "My apologies. I'm just here to ask you whether you need more hot water. I've just prepared more in the kitchen. If you need it, I'll bring you some right away." "That won't be necessary." After saying this, Yunwoo tossed a silver ingot to him. "This is your tip. You may leave." "Thank you, lady. If you need anything, just call me." The bellman's eyes lit up as he saw the silver ingot in his hands, and with that he hurriedly walked out of the room. When it came to managing money, Yunwoo actually didn't know much about it. But the bellman had brought her hot water 5 times in a row, which counted as trading manual labor for money, so there was no need for her to be niggardly. After cleaning herself up, Yunwoo intended to leave, but soon she realized that if she went outside like this, it probably wouldn't be long before the enemies found her. So she disguised herself as a man and then left the inn in a leisurely and composed manner. As expected, outside of the inn, she detected Tu Chi hiding in the dark. But at this moment, dressed in shiny clothes with a lot of golden decorations, he was emaciated with sallow complexion, sickly looking, and was also eyeing girls up like a lascivious playboy. She attracted a lot of pedestrians' attention as she walked out of the inn. The two people hiding in the dark flicked a glance at him, and contemptuously moved their eyes aside. Unnoticeably, Yunwoo slightly curved her lips. In an aimless and idle manner, humming a casual tune, she managed to leave the area in front of the two assassins' very eyes. However, what Yunwoo didn't know was that not long after she left, this inn was solidly surrounded by a group of soldiers, which scared a lot of passers-by. What was going on? Why did so many soldiers go to downtown area? What happened? Did a purple-eyed female come to this inn not long ago? A ferocious-looking officer yelled in a gruff voice the moment he walked into the inn, followed by a couple of soldiers. His voice was as loud as thunder. Scared, all guests in the inn hurriedly ran out. OFFI. Officer, what is going on? We're all law-abiding citizens, not dash. The innkeeper hastily walked up to the officer. I'm asking you whether you saw someone with purple eyes. Why are you taking nonsense? Just answer me with yes or no. The officer was very impatient. While the innkeeper was thinking, another batch of soldiers flooded into the inn. On the sight of those soldiers in the inn, the one in charge also yelled in a gruff voice, Innkeeper, did a black-faced female check in at your inn? Where is she? Black-faced? On hearing this word, the innkeeper instantly remembered. Yes, yes. There is indeed a woman whose whole face is black, and her eyes are purple. Where? Where is she? Two gruff yells were heard at the same time. The innkeeper buckled at the knees and hurriedly asked the bellman to lead these soldiers upstairs to find the person they wanted. However, the female wasn't in the room. Naturally, those soldiers who came later were sent here by Yunlungi. They hurried all the way here to arrest Yunwoo. And those who came first were at the command of the seventh prince who was staying in his mansion for rehabilitation. At this moment, when news came that the female was gone and that Yunlungi was also trying to arrest her, a sullen, cold look appeared on the face of Zhou Feiyu, who was sitting in the host seat in a living room. What a bunch of fatheads! Accompanied by an angry roar, a teacup was heavily thrown to the ground and busted. Watching Zhou Feiyu, who inexplicably became irascible, Coldness Wu, who was standing at the side, furrowed his forehead. A general kneeling on one knee on the ground hurriedly said, Your Highness, it probably hasn't been long since she left. I've already had some men to close all city gates. A citywide search is ongoing. As long as she's still in the city, we'll surely find her. Upon seeing that the look in Zhou Feiyu's eyes was still chilly, Coldness Wu also said, Your Highness, if that person was really Miss Wu, maybe it's better that she has left. Otherwise, if General-in-Chief Yun's soldiers catch her, things might be even trickier. Zhou Feiyu's anger seemed to be relieved somewhat after he heard these words. What do you think we should do? Zhou Feiyu raised his eyes and looked at him. Now that General-in-Chief Yun has already known about it, there's no need for us to try to act covertly. We can just keep searching. I think General-in-Chief Yun won't be bold enough to interfere in Your Highness matters. After contemplating for a while, Zhou Feiyu said to the general in the hall, Go and make some inquiries. Find out what it is that Yunlungi wants. Yes. The general quickly took his leave. There were only two people left in the living room. Your Highness, I seldom see you get so emotional. Is it because of the Queen's interference in national affairs? Coldness Wu asked Zhou Feiyu in a deep, low voice. Zhou Feiyu knitted his eyebrows tightly together, an icy look in his eyes. Don't you think you're being a busybody? I was being unduly talkative. But, Your Highness, given the current situation, if you really want to make some preparations, maybe we can have an audience with the Dragon Cabinet and talk about cooperation. Young Master Long and the Crown Prince are like Damon and Pythias. Do you really think he and I have anything to talk about? Your Highness, the so-called Damon and Pythias thing is merely the Crown Prince's exaggerative bluff. Actually, that young Master Long has a renowned merchant who is willing to dabble in anything profitable. As long as our offer is favorable enough, cooperation is not impossible. Zhou Feiyu raised his eyes and looked at Coldness Wu. You can find that young Master Long? The leader of the Dragon Cabinet, young Master Long, was a very mysterious man whose whereabouts had always been a secret. Very few people had ever seen him. In fact, a few years ago, Zhou Feiyu sent some men to look for him for several times but never found clues. But a man as mysterious as him actually made people feel that he was very dangerous. Coldness Wu gave a mild smile. A couple of years ago, my family once did business with the Dragon Cabinet. Maybe I can make contact with the Dragon Cabinet via my family. But rumor says that for some reason, the Dragon Cabinet has suddenly deployed their men in the Luo city recently. It seems as if those movements were directed against the Murong family. The Murong family? Zhou Feiyu lifted his eyebrows. Yes. A deep look flashed across the bottom of Zhou Feiyu's eyes. After this talk is over, pay a visit to the Murong family. Venerable Mistress Murong cured the pestilence in the Luo city and the Water city. Send a thank you gift to her on my behalf. Coldness Wu nodded with a smile. Yes. At the west gate of the border city. A luxurious horse-drawn carriage, driven by a horsekeeper, was slowly driving towards the outside of the city. However, before it could go out of the city, some soldiers stopped it. The city gate is sealed. No entrance or exit allowed. A loud, gruff voice was heard. The horsekeeper hurriedly stopped the carriage and said in a respectful tone, "Officer, we're from another city. My master is seriously ill and has to return home to receive medical treatment. I wonder if officer would be so kind as to do us a favor. I don't care who you are. Get off, get off. Security check." However, before that horsekeeper could finish his sentence, that soldier impatiently dragged him off the carriage and heavily pushed the door of the carriage open. In the carriage, a gloriously clothed noble master was leisurely sprawling in a couch, emaciated with sallow complexion, as if incurably ill. After flicking a glimpse at the eyes of the noble master, that soldier dismissively withdrew his eyes. Then the officer in charge said loudly to those nearby residents who were stranded, "We're looking for a purple-eyed female. Anyone who offers clues will be handsomely rewarded by His Highness." My lord, who is that female? Why did His Highness seal all city gates to catch her? Did that female by any chance try to hurt His Highness? A feeble, effeminate male voice came from inside the carriage. On hearing this, all those people who wanted to get out of the city but were stopped started querying. Yeah. What exactly did that female do? Why are you sealing city gates? We have goods to deliver. If you seal up the city, how can we do business? That's true. I have to go back home. If you don't let me through, what am I supposed to do? Hearing those animated discussion, those soldiers became very impatient. Why are you asking so many questions? Just inform us if you see anyone with purple eyes. Now clear off. Don't gather here. Then when can we leave the city, officer? You can leave when you are allowed to leave. Now get out of my sight. After hearing that rude, impatient voice, residents didn't dare to stay. Before long, they cleared off, though discontented and resigned. The horsekeeper respectfully looked at the noble master and said, "Master, the city gate is sealed. We go back." Yes. The horsekeeper closed the door and turned the carriage around. Naturally, the noble master, languidly sprawling in the couch inside the carriage, was Yun Wu. With her disguise, hardly anybody could recognize her. Originally, she had planned to hire a horse-drawn carriage and get out of the city above board. But unexpectedly, the city had been sealed up. The seventh prince? How did that Zhou Feiyu know she was in this border city? And he also sealed off the city to search for her, which got a lot of people involved. Now that leaving this city in an above-board manner was no longer an option, she had no choice but to leave at night. If she tried to get out during daytime, other trouble might come to her apart from the two assassins. She had the horsekeeper take her to the busiest street and find a large inn. She had just checked in and hadn't gone upstairs yet when a group of soldiers flooded into the inn. "Innkeeper, did you see a black-faced female with purple eyes come here?" the soldier leading the team yelled in a gruff voice. Almost all people in the inn could hear him. The innkeeper, who seemed to be a sophisticated man, hurriedly walked up to him with a big smile. "Sir, I've been standing behind the counter all day, but I didn't see anybody with a black face. If you don't believe me, I can have the bellman lead you upstairs to search the rooms. But would you please be so kind as to do it quietly so that my guests won't be scared?" Upon these words, the innkeeper stealthily stuffed a big silver ingot into the soldier's hand. The ferocious look on the soldier's face was replaced by a smile. He secretly put the silver ingot into his pocket and said, "Now that you told me there was no such person here, I'll go and search another place. But if you see that black-faced woman, report immediately." "Yes, yes. I'll follow your order and keep an eye open. Once I see anyone with a black face, I'll report to you right away, sir." With a big smile on his face, the innkeeper bowed respectfully and saw those soldiers off. After they left, the innkeeper seemed to be relieved. Yun Wu, who had been standing beside the counter all along, watched the innkeeper who had just turned around, and asked him in a seemingly very curious tone, "Innkeeper, were those soldiers looking for some black-faced woman? Who is that woman exactly? She caused such a sensation." "Master, this matter really makes me feel very resigned. They were the fourth batch of soldiers who came here to search today. Some of them said that they were hunting a black-faced female who wounded a deputy general. Others said that the seventh prince was looking for a purple-eyed female. God knows who that black-faced, purple-eyed woman is. Commoners like me have no choice but to let them search our places again and again. I just take it as buying peace with money." After saying this, the innkeeper let out another seemingly resigned sigh and returned to the counter. A female who wounded a deputy general. So, apart from that Zhou Feiyu, Yunlengyi's men were also hunting for her. Unexpectedly, he had taken action so soon. It had been only a short while since she entered the city, but the hunt had already started. The look in Yun Wu's eyes was somewhat deep and cold. But she affected an air of unconcern and walked out of the inn. Disguised as a lascivious, sickly master from some rich family, she walked into the busy street with an exaggerated swagger. After making an inquiry from a passerby about Yunlengyi's temporary abode in the city, Yun Wu headed for that place in an above-board manner. In the northern suburb of the city. That place had originally been a spacious farmhouse, surrounded by flatlands. Since Yunlengyi was dispatched here over half a month ago, this northern suburb had become his encampment. Most troops were stationed in further areas outside the city, so there were not many soldiers guarding the encampment. Those troops sent to the battleground hadn't returned yet, and neither had Yunlengyi. Besides, in order to hunt for her, a lot of soldiers had been dispatched to the city. Currently, there were not many soldiers in the encampment. Now that he was hunting her, she felt obliged to return the favor by sending him a great gift. The army led by Yunlengyi had just entered the city when a soldier hurriedly galloped over, a flustered look on his face. The moment he saw Yunlengyi, he immediately dismounted from his horse and rushed to him. "General-in-Chief, something bad happened. Someone set a fire to our encampment and burnt it." "What?" Faces of Yunlengyi and a couple of generals behind him instantly changed as they heard this. Immediately, most soldiers who had just entered the city hurriedly headed for the encampment in the north. The fire was still blazing. Flames almost reddened more than half of the sky. Soldiers hastily started firefighting. When the fire was put out, all tents in the encampment were burnt down, except for the one in the middle, which was a large tent belonged to Yunlungi. Go and check. Yunlungi dismounted from his horse and quickly walked towards his tent. Yunlungi was just about to walk inside first when you stopped him. General, don't take any risks. He raised his hand and signaled soldiers beside him to go inside. 2 soldiers walked forward, opened the flies, walked inside and didn't find anything unusual, except for an envelope on a table in the tent. General-in-Chief, there's nothing inside except for a letter. A soldier walked out and hurriedly handed the envelope to the general. There were 3 Chinese characters on the envelope, Yunlungi. Those characters were written with lively and vigorous flourishes, and every stroke of them was powerful, indicating that the one who wrote these characters was no common person. Yunlungi took the envelope but didn't open it right away. He exerted his spiritual power on it to scan it, in case it was a trap. After confirming that there was nothing dangerous in it, he opened the envelope and fished out the letter in it. However, a cloud of black fog almost invisible to the naked eye quickly spread outwards as he unfolded the letter. Watch out! When you immediately smacked that letter off Yunlungi's hand. But it was too late. Right at that moment, Yunlungi's face started blackening bit by bit. After a short while, his face became completely black. If there were a crescent-shaped mark on his forehead, he would look exactly like Bao Gong. This change stunned everybody present. Yunlungi himself didn't feel anything unusual, but he could see that his hands were blackening bit by bit. He would be lying if he said that he was not startled. When you hurriedly felt his pulse. After quite a while, he seemed relieved, but his eyebrows were knitted together. This is black poison. What? Poison? How did this happen? General-in-Chief. When all generals were worried, when you spoke again. Black poison is unharmful. It's just that, the skin of a victim will stay black for a month. Then the poison will be naturally excreted from pores in skin. Black poison could be extracted from a very common plant and any druggist could prepare it. It didn't count as a dangerous poison. Who played such a prank exactly? That person not only burnt their encampment but also put black poison in an envelope. General-in-Chief, there are some words in the letter. A sharp-eyed general noticed something in the letter on the ground. When you wrapped his hand in his sleeve and picked up that letter. When he saw the words on it, he involuntarily lifted his eyebrows. It was her. Yunlungi also glanced at the letter and furrowed his forehead. The look on his face instantly changed. Well, given that his face was so black, people actually couldn't tell whether his look changed or not. They saw that there was only one line in the letter, General-in-Chief, how does it feel to be black-faced? Don't risk going into the street lest you be confiscated. Except for that black-faced girl, who else could have written these words? After having some fun in the city, Yunwu was in a very good mood. With a long time to go before dark, in order to enjoy this good mood to the fullest, Yunwu started strolling along the street on her way back to the inn. It was just that due to her lascivious, sickly face, she felt that people kept giving her contemptuous gaze wherever she went. She had just arrived at a busy section when a fat, middle-aged woman ran into her. Hey, you invalid tried to molest me. How dare you touch my butt? A loud, angry yell was heard. Instantly, all people on the street moved their eyes onto Yunwu. This guy took liberties with a middle-aged woman under broad daylight. What a lecher. Judging from his clothes, he must be a master from some rich family. I never expected that a man like him would be so bold as to touch a woman's butt in public. Shame on him. I can tell he's no good person from his lascivious face. When all people around were discussing and whispering, Yunwu involuntarily raised her eyebrows and sized the woman up. However, as if having been molested again, that fat middle-aged woman crossed her arms over her chest and thundered, "Brat, how dare you stare at my chest in broad daylight? You are courting death. Stare at her chest." She was merely a fat, middle-aged woman whose face was full of wrinkles. Who had interest in staring at her? But lookers-on were inclined to put 2 and 2 together and make 5, which was why they all believed that woman's words. This is so filthy. He even peeped at a middle-aged woman. So shameless. After that middle-aged woman's angry yell, a tough hombre walked out of the crowd. Who took liberties with my mother? Whoever molested my mother must be courting death. The moment that tough hombre stepped forward, he walked towards Yunwu with a measured gait with his toes pointing outwards, his muscles rippling, a ferocious look on his face. Brat, you took liberties with my mother and also eyed her chest vulgarly. How are you going to make up to her for this? Watching that fierce-looking strong man, Yunwu asked with a bland smile, may I ask how do you want me to make up to her? Pay at least 80 taels of silver compensation to comfort my mother. Otherwise, I'll squeeze you to pieces, the tough hombre thundered, clenching his fists until they clicked. It seemed as if he would kill Yunwu if she refused to make compensatory payment. On seeing this, all lookers-on couldn't help drawing back, worrying that they might get hurt by accident during the potential fight. But Yunwu slightly curved her lips, neither afraid nor flustered. Unexpectedly, in this exotic world, there was also such trick as a trap of seduction, which she found hilarious. But Yunwu had no intention of fighting with him. There were too many people around. If she fought him, things might end up troublesome. Will you let this go if I compensate you? Yunwu slightly raised her head and asked that tough hombre who was a head higher than her. That tough hombre answered in a gruff voice, that's comfort fee. Let it be a lesson to you. Don't be so lascivious, and stop wandering around trying to molest women. There seemed to be awe-inspiring righteousness in his voice. Yunwu couldn't help feeling amused. But she still stretched out her hand into her front inside pocket. When she took her hand out, there was a shoe-shaped gold ingot in it. Do you think this is enough? The tough hombre's eyes lit up as he saw the shoe-shaped gold ingot, and he quickly nodded. Yunwu casually tossed the shoe-shaped gold ingot to him. The tough hombre caught the heavy shoe-shaped gold ingot and couldn't help looking at Yunwu. Wasn't this going too smoothly? By the way, here's a tip for you. Remind this ant to put something under her bosoms to raise them up a little bit before leaving home. Otherwise people might have trouble distinguishing her belly and her bosoms, which will make her seem less devoted to her job. After saying this, Yunwu turned around and left with a smile on the corner of her lips. At first, the woman and her son who stayed on the spot didn't understand what she meant. But after the two glanced at the middle-aged woman's fat belly, understanding suddenly dawned on them, and with that their faces turned dark with rage. Yunwu's figure had merged into the crowd. A master and his servant, who were sitting in the attic on the second floor of a tavern in the distance, saw what had just happened in the street. Master, I never expected that in this border city, there would be someone bold enough to took liberties with a woman in the street. The moral degeneration of the world is getting worse day by day. There are so many scum of society. In the attic on the second floor, a little boy about 10 years old dressed in white clothes flicked a glimpse at Yunwu's receding figure and made these remarks with a frown on his face. Little Qing, I told you before. Learn to control your temper. Disaster emanates from careless talk, a mild, graceful and crisp voice said. Displeased, the boy in white pouted but still moved his eyes to his master. Master, a month ago, there was a vision in the sky. Lord Grand Maester practiced divination and found that you would meet the person you were destined to be with at this place this afternoon. Did you see that person? The man didn't answer. In a leisurely manner, he slowly picked up the teacup before him, sent it to his lips behind a veil and took a sip. Watching his master, who was still as unconcerned and mild as always, little Qing couldn't help feeling very anxious. His master was son of Zhou Kingdom's Grand Maester, who bore the title of the First Prophet of God. He was supposed to be an unusually lucky person, but for some reason, he had been wearing a hat with white veil since childhood, and he almost stayed at home all the time. But over a month ago, after his master was attacked by a ruffian who sneaked into the mansion, Lord Grand Maester suddenly rejoiced. It turned out that because of that bloodshed, Grand Maester managed to find out via divination that his son would meet the person he was destined to be with at this tavern in this border city at U hour, who would enable him to free himself from the destiny of being alone all his life. After quite a while. Soon the bell would strike U hour. Surprisingly, this tavern, which was busy almost all year round, was very quiet this day. There was not a single well-featured young woman. Little Qing, who cared about his master's future well-being very much, inevitably went anxious. "Master, I'll go downstairs and take a look. If I see any suitable ladies, I'll invite them here." Upon these words, before the man could say anything, the little figure hurried towards the staircase. But he had just reached the landing when he ran into a figure. After casting a glance at that person, he couldn't help but furrow his brow and block Yunwu's path, saying disgustedly, "You degenerate, why are you here?" Watching Yunwu disguised as a man, little Qing suddenly felt scum like him was exceptionally hateful, as if his presence would degrade his master like a bit of a mouse's dropping would spoil a whole saucepan of broth. Confused, Yunwu, whose path was blocked, watched this boy who just rebuked her. Did they know each other? But she still blandly replied, "This is a tavern, so of course I'm here to eat. What else do you think I came here to do? Pooping? You." The boy was annoyed. "Find somewhere else to eat. Can't you see that my master is here? We've taken all seats on the second floor." "But the tavern keeper just told me that there were plenty of seats available on the second floor. That was the case a moment ago. Now, all seats here belong to my master, so get out." Impatiently, Yunwu flicked a glance at the boy being deliberately provocative, gently waved her hand, and with that the boy was immobilized, as if his acupoint had been struck. Yunwu walked past him, planning to find a seat. It was actually a very strange thing. Originally, she was on her way back to the inn, but when she was close to the destination, she sensed the qi of those two assassins. Had they by any chance already found her? To be on the safe side, Yunwu gave up returning to the inn. She decided to find a tavern to eat and then leave the city after dark. She had gone to several taverns but none of them had any seats available, so eventually she ended up coming into this one. It was just that she had already encountered a trap of seduction not long ago, and now this boy tried to make trouble out of nothing, which she found very noisy, so Yunwu blocked his acupoint with a silver needle to quiet him down. "Thank you for going easy on him, master. My little attendant was being impertinent. Please pardon him. It's boring to eat alone. May I ask if master is willing to come here and have a meal with me?" Suddenly, a mild, elegant and crisp voice came, making her feel very comfortable. Yunwu couldn't help looking in the direction of the source of the voice. Wearing spotlessly clean white clothes and a hat with white veil, that man looked refined and free from vulgarity, giving her an inexplicable feeling of serenity and comfort. Though unable to see his face, Yunwu had an intuition that the looks behind the veil were extraordinarily handsome. Originally, Yunwu had had no intention of talking with this master. But after hearing that voice, she became curious about that man. So she walked up to that table and sat opposite him. "Thank you for having a meal with me, master. I, Nangong Yi, won't forget this favor." Upon finishing the last word, with a gentle wave of his hand, he restored little Qing's acupoint. Yunwu involuntarily lifted her eyebrows and a piercing look flashed across the bottom of her eyes. Late stage of Tier 8. Judging from his voice, this man was probably still young, but unexpectedly, he was already in late stage of Tier 8. He must be no common person. "Master." Little Qing walked over, feeling like weeping but had no tears. The bell had just struck hour, but he had never expected that the one who was sitting in front of his master would be that degenerate who had openly taken liberties with a married woman on the street not long ago, a man, a sickly, lascivious man. What should he do? How was he supposed to explain this to venerable master after he went back? "Tell the tavern keeper they may serve. And go bring that bottle of flowers wine in the carriage," Nangong Yi ordered in a leisurely tone. Little Qing was eager to say something and even had an impulse to chase Yunwu away. But he didn't dare to do anything impudent in front of his master. After secretly shooting Yunwu a dark glance, he resignedly turned around and went downstairs. As far as I can tell, Master is not someone who is willing to share the table with others. May I ask why Master invited me? Yunwu said, blandly watching him. But secretly, she had already been sizing him up for a while. This man's chi was steady, and thin callus could be vaguely seen on his right hand, which indicated that he was a kung fu practitioner. But there was no killing aura or smell of blood about him at all. Yunwu was certain that this man had never killed anybody. Judging from his spotless white clothes and the clean table, he probably was fairly obsessive about cleanliness. In most cases, people like him either seldom socialized with people or didn't like socializing with people. My father practiced divination and predicted that at this time this afternoon, I would meet the person I was destined to be with. Since Master appeared at this moment, I think this counts as a predestined encounter to some extent. Let's enjoy a meal together and make friends with each other. While saying this, Nangongyi slowly stretched out his hand and poured Yunwu a cup of tea. Practicing divination. Meeting the person he was destined to be with. Making friends. This person was pretty interesting. Upon hearing his words, Yunwu involuntarily lifted her eyebrows and looked at the man wearing a veil. You think people who have a meal together count as friends? In that case, wouldn't there be too many friends? After hearing her words, Nangongyi remained silent, as if thinking about something. At this moment, footsteps came from the staircase. The bellman came to serve courses. They were all this tavern's specialties, good in color, smell and taste. Sir, your courses are served. I hope you enjoy your dinner. If you need anything, just call. The bellman said after serving the courses, and then went downstairs. Yunwu was not particular about table manners, so she picked up her chopsticks and began to eat, heedless of whether Nangongyi wanted to eat or not. In fact, she had been busy with all kinds of things, which even included burning the encampment, after returning from the battlefield, and she hadn't had anything for quite some time, so she was indeed very hungry. At this moment, little Qing, who had gone to get the wine, came back, carefully carrying a white bottle in his arms. Master, here is your flowers wine. Pour, an elegant, bland voice came from behind the veil. After casting a glance at Yunwu, who was eating in a self-involved manner, little Qing was annoyed but still poured 2 goblets of wine, handed one of them to Nangongyi and then discontentedly put the other one onto the table in front of Yunwu. Be spring. To make this wine, my master collected a lot of precious medicinal flowers. However, before little Qing could finish his sentence, Yunwu drank the goblet of wine in one gulp, smacked the empty goblet down onto the table in front of little Qing, indicating that she wanted him to pour her another goblet of wine. Little Qing was stunned and with that he blushed furiously. Every drop of that wine was worth a fortune. In order to have a taste of the flowers wine made by his master, numerous dignitaries were willing to spend large sums of money, but she drank it like a bull drank water, which was a total waste of this precious flowers wine. What? You invited me to drink with you, but I just drank a small goblet of it, yet you began to grudge it? Upon these words, Yunwu raised her eyes and looked at Nangongyi, whose face couldn't be distinctly seen. In fact, she did want to anger that little brat. Though he was still a little boy, he had been acting like a snob all along. As regards the wine, it was indeed very good. Actually, it was probably some kind of tonic wine. As for in what way it was beneficial for people's health, she was unable to identify what medicinal materials had been used to make this wine. But after drinking it, she felt refreshed and comfortable. This wine must be good for people's health. Little Qing, pour, Nangongyi said in a mild, graceful voice. But master, he drinks wine like an old bull drinks water. It would be such a waste to let her drink this precious wine. With a smack, he was slapped on the back of his head. Ouch! Who hit me? Little Qing held his head, grimacing. He didn't know when, but that bottle of flowers wine had been taken by Yunwoo. Your master had given the order, but you still kept nagging. You surely have no idea what the sentence, "a filthy mouth cannot utter decent language," means, do you? If you really don't know, find a mirror and look into it, and then you'll get it. After saying this, Yunwoo raised her head and drank that small bottle of wine in 3 gulps. After that, she put the bottle down onto the table, cleanly stood up and cast a piercing look at Nan Gong-yi, who had been silently staring at her through the veil all along. Your wine is indeed pretty good. It's a pity you didn't bring more. I promise I'll give you a jar of it the next time we meet, my friend. As Yunwoo turned around, Nan Gong-yi said with a smile. Yunwoo was stunned for a second and then gave a shrug. We can discuss that when we meet again. She didn't think that they would meet again. Besides, after she removed her makeup, the man she disguised herself as would no longer exist. The instant she finished the last word, her petite figure disappeared at the landing. As if having just understood the undertones contained in her previous words, little Ching, who had been begrudging that bottle of flowers wine, involuntarily got angry and yelled, "You are a dog. All your family members are dogs. Hey, don't leave. Come back. I'll teach you a lesson." Upon hearing the angry yell of that little brat, Yunwoo, who had just walked downstairs, curved her lips. But there was no smile in her eyes. Because when she was facing that man, she had a very strange feeling, as if he stared into her soul. But he had been calm and unconcerned from start to finish, as if he was cut off from the outside world, which was why she was unable to speculate or deduce what he was thinking of exactly. This feeling was blood-curdling, which made her feel that he was a very dangerous man. As a result, she'd better leave as soon as possible. Master, Patriarch asked you to come here to find the person you're destined to be with. Why did you allow that degenerate to share the table with you? Wasn't that? Watching Yunwoo, who was going further away, little Ching blushed scarlet in anger and nearly waved his claws to express his discontent. But the corner of the lips clamping tightly together behind the white veil slightly lifted, as if the man stood aloof from the world. At this moment, he also stood up from the seat and intended to leave. Master, you haven't met that person yet. It's still you hour. Let's just wait. Little Ching said anxiously. I've already met the one I'd been waiting for. Let's go. What? Little Ching didn't quite understand. He had already met that person. They had been sitting here for the whole afternoon, but that degenerate was the only one who had shown up, and no women had ever come here. Why did he say that he'd already met that person? Did his master by any chance mean that that disgraceful man was the one he was destined to be with? Little Ching's face changed as he thought about this. He hurriedly followed his master. Master, that degenerate was by no means the person you're destined to be with. Let's wait a moment longer. The next day. Outside the Luo city. A plain horse-drawn carriage slowly drove into the city. Inside the carriage was a nondescript female who, at this moment, was sitting cross-legged performing qi circulation. After leaving that border city, Yunwoo traveled all night and arrived in the Luo city. But after that outbreak of pestilence, there were probably a lot of people trying to find her in the Luo city. As a result, Yunwoo had changed her disguise in a town near the Luo city before hiring a horse-drawn carriage to go downtown. She wondered whether that Long Qingxie had heard the news or not. Apart from visiting Grandma Medicine, looking for Long Qingxie was also an important reason why she had come back to the Luo city this time. In order to revive her body, she needed his blood in addition to vigor grass. She had to find him and revive her body as soon as possible, since Elder White's condition was getting less and less optimistic. If the necklace was sealed up, Elder White would fall into deep sleep again. In fact, after all these things she had been through, she had already regarded Elder White as her mentor. It was under his guidance that she managed to get into this exotic world. And if it weren't for his help, she would probably have died in the forbidden area long ago. As a result, she must revive her body before the seal in the necklace restored. Lady, we're in the Luo city. They had just entered the city when the carriage stopped and the driver's voice came. Yunwoo opened the flies, took a glance and got off the carriage. After paying the fare, she turned around and headed for the Murong mansion. However, before long, she sensed that the atmosphere in the city was a little unusual. Have you heard it? A branch of the auction house of Dragon Cabinet is open for business in the Luo city today. This is the first day. A lot of people are there to look on. I heard it long ago. It's just that all those auction houses are meant for the wealthy. People like us can only watch from outside. Tell me about it. I heard that a lot of prestigious families came here today. Even the Lord of Water City is here. Yes, yes. I've just come back from there. Not only the Lord of Water City but also the Lord of our city and the Venerable Mistress were there. Walking on the street, Yunwoo saw that all pedestrians were discussing animatedly. The Dragon Cabinet? An auction house. But on hearing the last remark, Yunwoo, who had originally planned to go to the Murong mansion, instantly stopped. Excuse me, Aunt. Would you please tell me where that Dragon Cabinet is? While those people were talking, a presumptuous voice came. Passers-by couldn't help turning their heads back as they heard the voice. Lady, you must be an outsider, right? I mean, you don't even know about the Dragon Cabinet. The auction house of Dragon Cabinet is in the busiest area next to the North Street. But lady, I'm afraid you won't be able to have any fun there, because it's too crowded. Yes. I just came back from there. There were too many people. The spot was terribly congested. With the help of a couple of middle-aged women, Yunwoo arrived at the North Street. However, she hadn't approached that place yet when she saw the crowds congesting the street. If she tried to force her way through the crowd, it was very likely that she would be squeezed to death before she could reach the front. Step iced. Step aside. Right at this moment, a string of loud, shrill yells came from behind. A luxurious horse-drawn carriage hurriedly drove over. The male driver was angrily yelling at those people in his way. Suddenly, he swung his whip at them. Many people failed to dodge aside in time and got hit by the whip. Bloody wounds appeared on them. At this moment, Yunwoo, who was standing in the middle of the road, had just turned her head back when she saw that the whip was swung at her. A cold look flashed across the bottom of her eyes. With a movement of her foot, her figure disappeared into thin air on the spot like a phantom the last moment before the whip reached her position. The man who swung the whip at her on the carriage was instantly stunned. Where was she? Just now, he had distinctly seen a female in front of him. Was that just a figment of his imagination? But that man didn't think much about this, since there were a lot of people blocking his way. Step aside. All of you. Step aside. With his loud voice and his whip, those people crowding the street really started scattering, trying to dodge the carriage, but a lot of them were infuriated. In the auction house of Dragon Cabinet. At this moment there were many lookers on, but none of them was able to get close. They could only watch from the distance. That luxurious carriage went through the North Street and finally reached a broad street where there was a lot for parking carriages in front of the auction house of Dragon Cabinet not far away from the gate. The moment the carriage stopped, an attendant standing outside the auction house hurriedly walked up to it. The attendant and the driver respectfully opened the door of the carriage and a light red figure walked out. Beneath the gaze of a lot of people amazed by her beauty, the female slowly get off the carriage. Lady Ruo, finally you're here. Everybody has been expecting you, the attendant said to the female in an extremely respectful tone. Did you light the lamp in Master's room? The female asked in a tender, pleasant voice. The attendant nodded, it's been on for quite a while. A gentle smile appeared on the female's face as she heard this. On the sight of this smile, people around all secretly gasped in astonishment. She has exquisite features, a fine oval face and snow-white skin. Her every move displayed charm and dignity. As beautiful as a flower? No, this female was even more delicate than a flower, especially her liquid, big eyes, which looked limpid and clear but was tinged with charm. This female might be the only person who could be described with the idiom, a single smile would overthrow a city. At this moment, lookers-on around her seemed to have forgotten the previous rampage of the carriage and the rudeness of the driver. All men's eyes were fixed on her. All women clenched their teeth in jealousy. She was really a very beautiful woman. Even Yunwoo had to admit the beauty of that female. Just now, Yunwoo had dodged that whip and then conveniently followed the carriage through the crowd. At this moment, she was standing behind the carriage, unconcernedly watching those people. When the attendant respectfully led the female towards the auction house, she followed them, planning to infiltrate into the house by pretending to be with that female. However, because of the plain clothes she wore, guards stopped her at the gateway. "Who are you? Do you have an invitation?" On hearing the gruff voice of the guard, the beautiful woman walking in the front paused, turned around and flicked a glance at Yunwoo. She sized Yunwoo up and soon contemptuously withdrew her eyes and walked inside the house. Contemptuously? Indeed, she could distinctly see scorn and sarcasm in her eyes. She was satirizing her. Yunwoo secretly sneered. She withdrew her gaze, raised her eyes and looked at the guard who had just yelled at her in a loud voice. She intended to say that she was from the Murong family. But at this moment, a crisp male voice pleasant to the ear came from behind her. "She's with me." On hearing this, Yunwoo turned her head back and her eyebrows abruptly lifted on the sight of the man wearing white clothes and a hat with white veil and the little attendant beside him. They also came here. It was the man she met in that tavern in the border city in the afternoon the day before. Yunwoo managed to get to the Luo city after traveling all night, but how come they also appeared in this place at this moment? Little Qing cast a glance at plain-looking Yunwoo and furrowed his forehead, as if displeased with his master's action. Yesterday he received a male degenerate. Today he helped this ugly woman. Why is master acting so weirdly after leaving home? After grunting these words in a low voice, he reluctantly walked forward and handed an invitation to the guard. "It turns out you're Grand Maester's son, Master Nangong." "My apologies. I didn't know this lady's with Master Nangong. Please pardon me." On the sight of the invitation, the guard, who had just yelled in a gruff voice with a sullen look on his face, hastily changed his attitude and bowed respectfully. The attendant standing on the side also hurried over to lead the way. "This way, please, Master Nangong." "Grand Maester's son." A flash of surprise crossed Yunwoo's eyes as she heard this. She couldn't help flicking a couple of extra glances at Nangong Yi. One of the 5 items she needed to collect was called pure blood. So it was this man's blood? Wasn't she too lucky? She needed something, and the next second someone just showed up and gave it to her voluntarily. While Yunwoo was sizing him up, Nangong Yi also looked through the veil at Yunwoo. The corner of his lips lifted, as if he was smiling. Then he said politely in a gentle voice, "After you, lady." Yunwoo withdrew her gaze, directly turned around and followed the attendant into the house without saying anything or making any gestures of gratitude. Upon seeing that Yunwoo impolitely walked inside before them, little Qing standing beside Nangong Yi clenched his teeth. This woman was so impertinent. His master offered her help, but she not only didn't say thank you but also regarded herself as the host. A faint smile appeared on Nangong Yi's handsome face behind the veil, a tender and meaningful look flashing across the bottom of his eyes. Then he followed them inside at a leisurely pace. Originally, little Qing had wanted to say something, but since his master was so disappointing, he had no choice but to follow him. The decorations of the auction house was resplendent, which must have cost the owner a fortune. There were about 20 boxes in a circle on the second floor. And all seats in the hall had also already been taken. The attendant led them to the third box, which was on the left side on the second floor. "Master Nangong, this box is reserved for you." If you need anything, flip the button on the wall and we'll come immediately. After saying this respectfully, the attendant took his leave. Yunwoo walked into the box and looked around. Over 20 square meters with extravagant furnishings, it was probably a VIP box. Yunwoo picked a seat near the curtain and sat down. From that seat, she could see the whole auction platform as well as the entire hall. Due to the curtain, people couldn't see who were inside the box from outside. It was pretty good. However, Yunwoo had just sat down when a displeased, loud voice came. Hey, hey! You, ugly woman! You're so impolite. This box is ours. Why did you follow us in here? And that's my master's spot. Get out of here. Little Qing angrily strode towards Yunwoo. It seemed as if he was going to force her out of the box. Little Qing. Right at this moment, Nangong Yi's deep voice came. On hearing it, Little Qing turned his head back and pouted, Master, that's your seat, but this ugly woman. You're so talky. Go out and have someone bring us some snacks. Upon saying this, Nangong Yi sat down beside Yunwoo. Watching Yunwoo, Little Qing was very unhappy. But he knew well about his master's temper. Eventually, he coldly snorted at Yunwoo, turned his head aside and left. Yunwoo flicked a glance at that little brat. Little Leaf was also about 10 years old, but she was much more adorable. This little guy was so noisy. I hope you wouldn't mind, lady. My little attendant has always been like that. He means no harm. A mild, refined, pleasant and very polite voice was heard. Yunwoo turned her head aside and cast a glance at Nangong Yi who was sitting on the other side of the teapoy. May I ask if Master Nangong means any harm? From the very beginning, she had always been having this weird feeling that this man stared into her soul, which sent chills down her spine. If it weren't for that she had heard that he was the Grand Maester's son, she wouldn't have been in the same room with this man at all. It was so weird. She felt very uneasy. But Yunwoo didn't show it on her face. Having disguised herself as a plain-looking woman, she directly looked back at the man who was staring through the veil at her. On hearing her words, Nangong Yi gently smiled, as if in a good mood. Why are you smiling? It's nothing. I just feel that the way you talk is pretty interesting. You seem like a daring person. Are you worried that I might abduct and sell you? Nangong Yi said in a mild voice with a smile. Obviously he was smiling, but she didn't feel that he was teasing her at all. Instead, there seemed to be an air of sacredness and spiritual purity about him, which made her feel calm. The fear in Yunwoo gradually dissolved after she heard his voice. This was so strange. Yunwoo couldn't help sizing him up again. This man was Grand Maester's son, and Grand Maester was acclaimed as the best soothsayer. Did he by any chance also know how to practice divination? Had he already known her true identity? Or had he seen through her disguise from the very beginning? Lady, if you keep staring me like this, I might misunderstand you. Nangong Yi watched Yunwoo, smiling. Misunderstand her? Yunwoo was briefly stunned and then the corner of her lips lifted. Master Nangong is so humorous. I'm very serious. On hearing this, Yunwoo was stunned again. She couldn't help flicking a glance at him. Nangong Yi said no more and just watched her in silence. The room became quiet. Yunwoo knitted her pretty eyebrows together. That creepy feeling came back to her. Hey, you ugly woman. Why are you staring at my master like that? Right at this moment, Little Qing's loud voice came from the doorway and with that Little Qing carrying snacks ran inside. He put down the snacks and angrily stood before Yunwoo with arms akimbo. He glared at her as if she had just tried to sexually harass his master. Yunwoo pulled a wry face. Why did he think that she tried to seduce his master? But his presence dissolved the creepy feeling she'd been having. Knock, knock. Right at this moment, sounds of the hammer hitting the table were heard. On the sight of the person who had just appeared on the platform, all people stopped discussing and quieted down. On the auction platform stood a beautiful woman wearing a light red dress made of thin silk. She was the auctioneer in charge of this day's auction in the auction house of Dragon Cabinet. Wasn't that woman the one who had given Yunwoo a contemptuous look at the gate? On the sight of the woman on the platform, Yunwoo curved her lips in a sneer. No wonder she dared to be so arrogant and hurt pedestrians on the street. It turned out that she was an auctioneer of this auction house. Ruoling swept her beautiful eyes through those people sitting in the hall. When she saw the astonishment in the eyes of those men amazed by her beauty, she felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. But she couldn't help looking in the direction of the box opposite the auction platform on the top floor. In this world, there was probably only one man who had never looked at her carefully. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ruoling, the acting chief auctioneer of the 13th branch of Dragon Cabinet Auction House. I'll be hosting today's auction, which is the first auction after this auction house opens for business today. Soon she withdrew her gaze and made a self-introduction to all people present with a smile. After the opening speech was made in a tender, pleasant voice, the hammer went down. Today's auction begins. She cleanly declared the start of the auction. Both people in boxes and those in the hall couldn't help showing signs of admiration. Before an auction started, there was always a verbose warm-up speech, but in fact, that only made people feel impatient. But the Dragon Cabinet's reputation was well earned. Though this chief auctioneer looked so young, her manner was very brisk and decisive. My master said that since this was the day the 13th branch of Dragon Cabinet Auction House opened for business, Dragon Cabinet would only charge the highest bidder half price during the auctioning of the first lot, no matter how high the under-the-hammer price is. After saying this, Ruoling waved her hand and with that a female carried a crystal-clear, fish-shaped jade plate to the platform. This jade plate was carved out of top-notch congealed fat jade. It calms the nerves of the wearer and makes the wearer feel cool in summer and warm in winter. The starting price is 1,000 taels of silver. Each bid should be no less than 100 taels of silver higher than the previous one. This was the first lot, and there was also a 50% discount. Obviously, it didn't count as precious. Besides, its efficacy was not impressive at all. It was widely known that what made the auction house of the Dragon Cabinet different from other auction houses was that they never disclosed any information of the lots before the auction. But there were always some surprising treasures in their auctions, some of which were even of extreme rarity, especially the last lot of every auction, which always caused a sensation. As a result, though the Dragon Cabinet never disclosed what they were going to auction, all their auctions had full house. In some cases, seats were booked out a month in advance. But on this day, the first lot of the auction seemed a little disappointing. It was totally quiet in the auction house. Nobody took a second glance at that jade plate, as if nobody was interested in it at all. Though 1,000 taels of silver was not much, people were unwilling to waste money on such a small jade plate. They would rather save money to bid for the last lot, which was the most precious. Everybody remained silent for quite a while. If nobody bid, the first lot would go unsold. If the first lot went unsold, the auction house would become a laughingstock. But Ruoling, standing on the platform, remained calm. 1,000 taels of silver. Right at this moment, a boy said in a seemingly impatient voice. He was in the third room on the left side, which was Nan Gongyi's box. On hearing this voice, Ruoling on the auction platform raised her eyes and looked in the direction of the box. But soon, she withdrew her gaze. She asked 3 times in a row, but there was no other bid. The hammer went down and the first lot was sold to the bidder in the third box at half the starting price. Before long, a teenage girl sent the auction jade plate into the box. Master Nangong, this is the top-notch congealed fat jade plate you've just bought. The price is 500 taels of silver after a 50% discount. Yunwoo picked up her teacup and leisurely sipped at her tea. After glancing at the jade plate brought here by the teenage girl, she secretly scanned it with her spiritual power. When she sensed thick, pure white fog in the jade plate, her eyes lit up. The moment this top-notch congealed fat jade was brought to the auction platform, Yunwoo felt that the soaring dragon scroll in her consciousness sea gave a jolt. Though the jolt was not a violent one, it aroused Yunwoo's curiosity. So Yunwoo asked Little Qing to bid on her behalf. Little Qing glimpsed at Yunwoo and said in a seemingly impatient voice, "Ugly woman, what are you waiting for? You bid for this thing. Pay for it yourself." Watching the jade plate on the table, Yunwoo felt somewhat inexplicably excited. As a result, she ignored Little Qing's confrontational remarks. She stretched her hand into her sleeve and fished out a blood-red gemstone, and then she waved her hand and the gemstone landed in front of the teenage girl. "I don't have enough cash on me, so I'll pay for it with this gemstone." In fact, there were chests of silver ingots, shoe-shaped gold ingots, gold leaves and all kinds of jewels in her storage space, the total value of which was unknown to even herself. But if she took out silver ingots, that would be synonymous with directly telling others she had storage space. Yunwoo didn't want any trouble, so she just randomly fished that gemstone out of her storage space, believing that it should be enough to substitute for 500 taels of silver. However, when Little Qing and Nangong Yi saw that gemstone, they all did a double take. Blood jade? Wasn't it the last lot of the auction held in the Imperial City branch of the auction house of Dragon Cabinet last year? Back then, Nangong Yi was also present at that auction. He remembered that the royal family bid won 5 million taels of silver for this gemstone and also secretly exerted regal power and eventually managed to beat all other bidders. How come it ended up in her hands? And she used this precious gemstone to substitute for 500 taels of silver? Was this woman stupid or did she have terrible discernment? Little Qing watched Yunwoo as if he was watching a fool who had suffered brain damage. In fact, Yunwoo had no idea what that was at all. She just casually fished something out and didn't even look at it. At the moment all her attention was on that jade plate. As a result, unaware of their reaction, she stood up, walked over and directly picked up the jade plate on the table. The moment she picked the jade plate up, the soaring dragon scroll in her consciousness sea abruptly jolted. Before Yunwoo could react, the thick white fog in the jade plate swished into her and rapidly hurtled into the Hundun Palace in her consciousness sea. After the white fog entered the palace, the soaring dragon scroll seemed to shake even more violently. Click! Yunwoo seemed to have heard a faint sound of something opening up. However, before she could find out what that sound was about, a stream of pure qi rushed through her meridians and then soon disappeared. And the soaring dragon scroll in the Hundun Palace also gradually calmed down. But to Yunwoo's surprise, the mysterious totemic pattern on the soaring dragon scroll seemed to have noticeably expanded, as if the soaring dragon scroll had been incomplete before this happened. The white fog in the jade plate was also part of the soaring dragon scroll. And now, it had integrated with the soaring dragon scroll. "You, little girl. Where did you find another fragment of the soaring dragon scroll?" Voice of the thick-bearded door god was heard in her mind. Another fragment of the soaring dragon scroll? On hearing this, Yunwoo did a double take and then asked him in her mind, "Thick beard, you knew that the soaring dragon scroll was incomplete?" It was quiet for a while in her mind. Then Thick Beard's voice came again. "The soaring dragon scroll is a sacred scroll in which information about everything in the world is recorded. If it weren't for that the scroll was shattered during a battle, it would never have ended up in the mortal realm. But you girl not only got recognized by the soaring dragon scroll but also could detect fragments of it. I don't know whether you're lucky or reckless." Upon hearing the thick beard's mumbles in a seemingly resigned voice, Yunwoo raised her eyebrows. A sacred scroll? This soaring dragon scroll also bore this title. It sounded pretty cool. After integrating the fragment with the scroll, Yunwoo felt that a lot of information had been added to the soaring dragon scroll, which made her both surprised and delighted. Because this meant that she had more information about treasures and other things in this world at her disposal. Just like she had a treasure map, and all she had to do was find those treasures. Once she revived her body, the first thing she was going to do was collect all 12 pieces of the map of how to get to the Summoner's Shrine. She needed power, huge power. Though for some inexplicably reason, she had already become a summoner, she was still being hunted, facing life-threatening danger every day. And the reason for all this was that she was not powerful enough to fight back against her enemies head-on. Thinking about this, Yunwoo felt very uncomfortable. She, Yunwoo, had never been a coward, neither in the last incarnation nor in this one. She clenched her fists. She was not powerful enough, so she would try to get more powerful. She had no armed forces, so she would build her armed forces by herself. Someday, she would be the most powerful person in the world. Competitive fire blazed intensely in her. In the wing. The female who had just brought the jade plate here had taken her leave. The man and his little attendant were watching her. Little Qing was somewhat stunned when he saw her clenched fists and the cold look in her eyes. What was she thinking about exactly? Why was her face so fierce? He knitted her little eyebrows. Outside, the auctioning of the second lot had begun. Master, stop looking at this stupid, ugly woman. Let's check out the second lot, little Qing hurriedly said to his master. He always felt that his master was paying too much attention to this ugly woman, which she didn't really deserve. On hearing little Qing's voice, Yunwoo collected herself. This brat seemed to dislike her. He kept calling her ugly woman from the moment they met. But Yunwoo was in a good mood, so she ignored him. Since the jade plate in her hand was useless now, she casually put it back into her front inside pocket and then returned to her seat. This time, she became somewhat interested in the next lot. She wondered whether she would be lucky enough to find some other, good stuff. Nangong-yi slightly raised the corners of her mouth, watching her in amusement. It was not until a voice came from down below that he slowly moved his eyes onto the auction platform. The next lot is a first-rate coral snow Ganoderma, which is already 1,000 years old. It has a seed on the top of it, which could be taken off and sowed. After some careful nurturing, it might grow into a snow Ganoderma flower plant. The starting price for this first-rate 1,000-year-old coral snow Ganoderma is 10,000 taels of silver. Every bid should be no less than 1,000 taels of silver than the last one. This snow Ganoderma aroused a lot of people's interest. The moment the voice died away, someone raised their paddle. 11,000 taels of silver. 15,000. 20,000. Coral snow Ganoderma was a very precious medicinal material which could improve people's constitution and enhance their spiritual power. If made into pills and then ingested by a kung fu practitioner, the efficacy would be even greater. Snow Ganoderma also had another efficacy, prolonging common people's lives. Besides, this is an 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma with a seed which might grow into an invaluable snow Ganoderma flower plant. It could boost the efficacy of drugs if mixed with medicinal materials when preparing drugs, which was extremely tempting for both druggists and senior pharmacists. Naturally, there were plenty of druggists present. Those in gray robes who raised their paddles and bid for the lot were all druggists. As for senior pharmacists, due to their high status, it was naturally impossible to see them sitting in the hall. If any senior pharmacists had come here this day, they probably were in boxes. However, nobody in boxes had bid so far. Currently, the highest bid was 55,000 taels of silver. The auctioning of this lot was about to come to an end. The hammer had already gone down twice. All of a sudden, a deep female voice came from the third box upstairs on the left. 100,000. On hearing this voice, a skinny druggist abruptly raised his head, coldly squinted and looked in the direction of the box upstairs, faint anger gleaming in his eyes. This woman had been quiet all along but suddenly outbid him when he was about to win the bid. How could he tolerate this? 101,000, the skeletal old druggist took a deep breath and said in a sepulchral tone. Those sitting in boxes on the second floor were either from large, prestigious families or reclusive senior pharmacists. Naturally, he was very unwilling to offend any of those people. It was just that he was determined to get this 1,000-year-old coral snow Ganoderma. 200,000. Yunwoo yelled in a bland tone, ignoring little Qing who was standing transfixed with shock on the side. Originally, she was indifferent to this lot, but after hearing little Qing talking about the efficacy of the 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma, especially the part about prolonging people's lives, she suddenly became interested. Since grandma medicine was unable to cultivate, she could only live 100 years or so at the most. For senior people like grandma medicine, this coral snow Ganoderma which could prolong people's lives was definitely the most valuable thing. She decided to do something for grandma medicine before returning to the imperial city. The moment she named her bid, that skinny druggist furiously clenched his teeth so hard that his roots of teeth nearly broke. She directly doubled her bid. This was way beyond his budget. The starting price of this snow Ganoderma was merely 10,000 taels of silver, and the current highest bid was 20 times that number, which exceeded the true value of this 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma to a large extent. What was that bidder in the box exactly? Did she deliberately choose to bid at this moment to cross him? With a sepulchral look on his face, the skeletal druggist raised his head and said loudly, "The bidder in the third box upstairs on the left, may I ask which family you're from? Or are you a senior pharmacist? I really need this 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma to prepare some remedies for the royal household. If by any chance your excellency is not in urgent need of it, would you please be so kind as to do me a favor and let me have it?" His words sounded pretty polite, but he explicitly mentioned the royal household to back himself up. The royal household. It turned out that he was a druggist working for the royal household. Though the status of a druggist was not as high as that of a senior pharmacist, it's much higher than that of a physician. Upon hearing this, all people couldn't help raising their eyes to look in the direction of the third box. Yunwoo slightly raised the corners of her mouth, but the look in her eyes was icy. The royal household. If he hadn't mentioned the royal household, she might have given up this lot to him, but now she was determined to get it. I don't have many hobbies, but I do like bidding against the royal household. On hearing this, all people sitting in the hall down below exclaimed in amazement. Which family is she from? She talks so big. She dares to challenge the authority of the royal household, so she must be from some powerful background. How dare she talk like that? It is said that even Grand Maester's son and a lot of lords are here in this auction. People were animatedly discussing. That skinny druggist stared in the direction of that box with a dangerous look in his squinted eyes, his face sullen. What kind of background was this woman from? How dare she say that her hobby was to bid against the royal household? Those were quite big words. But this 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma was the last messenger drug he needed to prepare the remedy. After briefly clenching his teeth, the skinny druggist said loudly, 201,000 taels. Given his budget, this was the best he could do. If he bought this thing at a price higher than this, he might not be able to bid for another valuable lot. Yunwoo said coldly, 300,000. Wow! This time, exclamations of amazement came from not only the hall but also some boxes. 300,000 taels. This was merely the second lot. Nobody had ever bid higher than 100,000 taels for any of the first 5 lots in any previous auction. But this woman in that box bid 300,000 taels for the second lot. What the hell was she doing? Was she deliberately bidding up this lot? Or was she a fool who knew nothing about market value of it at all? If she kept doing this, wouldn't the hammer prices of all remaining lots be insanely high? You ugly woman. You can't just yell wild numbers like this. It's just a snow Ganoderma, but you bid it up to 300,000 taels. I think you're out of your mind. If you don't have enough money to pay for it, our master won't help you. In the box, shocked by Yunwoo's bid, little Qing couldn't help reminding her in an angry voice. Yunwoo turned her head aside and raised the corners of her mouth. I'm a poor woman, and I indeed don't have money. If you don't let your master pay for it, I'll sell you talkie kid to get the money. You crazy woman. I dare you. Why should I be afraid of doing that? Your master didn't say anything, did he? He must have been tired of you for a long time. I'd be doing him a favor if I sell you, since nobody would be making any noises around him any longer. But I'm afraid I won't be able to pay for it even if I sell you, Yunwoo wickedly sneered. Little Qing looked at his master. Nangong-yi smiled but said nothing. In white clothes, he just leisurely sat on a stool, silently watching the two people with his wise black eyes. But nobody could see the look on his face behind the white veil. So nobody knew what he was thinking about. Little Qing was still a little boy after all. Seeing that his master kept silent, he felt aggrieved. On the sight of the smile on Yunwoo's face, he instantly got annoyed. Why, you? Little Qing blushed with anger. Yunwoo felt that she had become somewhat childish after being around this kid all this time, but she was also complacent to see this brat angered. This was a punishment for this brat's repeatedly calling her ugly woman, crazy woman. In the hall down below. With a ferocious look in his eyes, the skinny druggist glared in the direction of the box on the second floor. You, woman. Why are you openly crossing the royal household exactly? All others also sensed the tension in the atmosphere. Though the status of druggists was not as high as that of senior pharmacists, they also had contacts, so people should try not to offend them. Otherwise, there would be unnecessary troublesome consequences. It was especially so in this case. This druggist's work was to prepare remedies for the royal household. He was a servant of the royal household, which meant that offending him was synonymous with offending the royal household. Most people from large families would think about this when facing a druggist like him. Yunwoo withdrew her gaze at little Qing, turned her head aside and flicked a glance at the skinny old man in the hall. She casually curved her lips and said languidly, "You're such a funny guy. Do you actually think that others are not allowed to bid for whatever takes your fancy? That anyone who outbids you is openly running a counter to the royal household? If that's the case, nobody dares to bid for any of the rest of the lots, since all people present today might be openly crossing the royal household." Upon hearing, all people, both those in the hall and those in boxes on the second floor, furrowed their foreheads, contemplating. Indeed, there might be something they needed among the remaining lots. Naturally, every lot should go to the highest bidder. Why should they give up bidding just because the royal household wanted the lot? Thinking about this, those people, who had been discussing animatedly, frowned and looked at that skinny druggist. The skinny druggist was annoyed. Stop using lame arguments and perverted logic. Which family are you from exactly? Identify yourself. Don't be a coward. Yunwoo said languidly and blandly, "I don't think I owe you an answer to your question. But I want to tell you something out of kindness. Since you're here on behalf of the royal household, please don't just outbid me by a mere 1,000 taels at a time. If that's the best the royal household can do, why came to this auction in the first place? It's really embarrassing. Her tongue is so sharp. Isn't she openly saying that the royal household was poor? Who is that woman in the box exactly? How dare she make such disrespectful remarks in front of so many people? In a luxurious box on the top floor. A man wearing a bizarre ghost-like mask across one side of his face was watching this scene down below. On hearing the deliberately lowered female voice, he slightly raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the third box on the second floor. Is it her? There was another man in the box. On hearing this, Coldness Wu glanced at the mysterious man in white, looking in the direction of the third box out of the corner of his eye. Her. Does young Master Long know that woman in the box? Young Master Wu, I think you're asking too many questions. A languid, low voice was heard. Coldness Wu gave a mild smile and nodded. Sorry, that's me being a busybody. May I ask what young Master Long thinks about my master's suggestion about cooperation between us? But the wickedly handsome man in white made no response to this question. However, a meaningful, mysterious look appeared in his black eyes behind the mask, making it difficult for others to conjecture about his thoughts. The skinny druggist's white face blushed scarlet with anger and his body was shaking. "How dare you defame the royal household like that? You're courting death. Soon you'll regret this." He clenched his teeth with an undisguisedly murderous look on his face. Yunwoo giggled. "Defame? What did I defame? But the ashamed and angry look on your face is really a rare scene. Be careful. Don't burst your blood vessels. You'll regret this." Eyes ablaze with anger, the skeletal druggist clenched his fists until the bones clicked. At last, he managed to suppress his anger and slumped down in his seat. But the desire to kill was surging inside him. He was determined to kill Yunwoo after the auction to vent his anger and hatred. In the 10th wing. On hearing those words, Cloud Murong involuntarily knitted his eyebrows together. This was his city. That woman dared to make such remarks in front of so many people, including himself. If he didn't intervene, the Murong family would have to face dire consequences if news of this matter spread to the imperial city. Go. Find out who those people in the 3rd box are. Invite that woman who just talked to this room. In a low voice, Cloud Murong gave an order to a guard standing on the side. The guard obeyed and walked out of the wing. In the 11th wing. This was the box of the Lord of Water City, in which Ouyang Yu and Ouyang Ko were. "Dad, I heard that the 3rd wing is reserved for Grand Maester's son." Since that woman said those words, people of Murong Mansion probably will go to the 3rd wing to invite her. Ouyang Ko smiled, watching Ouyang Yu. Of course Ouyang Yu knew what he was implying. He smiled mildly. "Don't be a busybody. Just look on." "How am I supposed to look on if I stay in this room? What do you want to do?" That scene didn't affect the auction. After the skinny druggist sat down, the 3rd lot was delivered to the box. However, maybe it was because he was infuriated by Yunwoo, the skinny druggist kept silent during the auctioning of the next few lots, all of which were top-notch medicinal materials, and there was even a rare one among them. In the wing, Yunwoo naturally returned to normal, leisurely, and indifferent, as if she was also uninterested in the next few lots. Nangong-yi hadn't even given a glance at any of those lots. Instead, he was staring at her most of the time. Yunwoo was eager to roll eyes at him. She had disguised herself as a plain-looking, nondescript woman. Why is he still staring at me? Every gaze he gave her made feel uneasy. Knock. There was a knock at the door. She thought that it was someone who came here to deliver the 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma. However, it was a guard who walked into the room. "Who bid for the last lot?" "The lord of the city wants an audience with that person," the guard flicked a glance at Yun and said in a low voice after entering the room. "The lord of which city, if I may ask?" Little Qing looked at the guard and asked. The guard glimpsed at Little Qing and the man wearing white clothes and a hat with white veil. He had made some inquiries and been told that this man was Grand Maester's son, Nangong-yi. "The lord of the city I'm talking about is the lord of Luo City. I'm following orders. Please pardon me, Master Nangong." After saying this, the guard walked towards Yunwoo. "Wait. You can't take her. Go back and tell your lord. If you want to meet her, he'll have to come here himself." Little Qing suddenly blocked the guard's path, trying to stop him from taking her away. This little boy's action surprised Yunwoo. She slightly lifted the corners of her mouth, stood up, walked over and rubbed his head. "Well, thank you for standing up for me, brat. But since the Lord of Luo City requested my presence, I'll go there. If somebody delivers the 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma here, tell that person to directly send it to the room of the Lord of Luo City." "Who stood up for you?" "Don't touch my head, you ugly woman." Little Qing angrily pushed aside the hand of Yunwoo, who was patting him like patting a puppy. He just felt that though he didn't like this ugly woman, this was his master's room, and his master would lose face if he let the guard take her away. However, Yunwoo smiled and quickly walked out of the room. "Master, isn't that ugly woman a fool? She had just made those disrespectful remarks when the Lord of Luo City sent his men here. It's obviously not a good thing, but she still willingly went there like an idiot. What a moron." Watching Yunwoo's receding figure, little Qing couldn't help looking at his master who had been silent all along. "Why? Are you worried about her?" Nangong-yi said in a mild and elegant voice, a bland smile on his face. On hearing this, little Qing nearly jumped up. Who would possibly worry about her? She's such an ugly woman, yet she dared to say that she would trade me for money. Who does she think she is? Humph. Who would worry about her? Humph. He snorted in annoyance 2 times in a row, which was a typical childish tantrum. Nangong-yi couldn't help but curve his lips in a smile behind the veil. "Your lordship, she's here." In the 10th wing, after leading her inside, the guard quickly walked up to Cloud Murong and whispered something into his ears. After entering the room, Yunwoo flicked a glimpse at him and then rested her eyes on Grandma Medicine. Grandma Medicine, dressed in grosgrain clothes, was sitting on the side, looking like a noble, dignified venerable mistress. However, judging by the light frown on her face, it seemed as if she wasn't very accustomed to this place. On hearing the identity of the occupier of the 3rd wing, Cloud Murong involuntarily frowned and looked at the nondescript woman in plain clothes. "Was it you who made those disrespectful remarks?" Cloud Murong asked in a deep voice. Yunwoo didn't reply immediately but sat down in a chair on the side, poured herself a cup of tea and sipped at it, as if she was an acquaintance of them. "Your lordship, did you summon me here to interrogate me?" This time, Yunwoo didn't lower her voice. That languid, apathetic voice sounded very familiar to him. Cloud Murong didn't recall immediately, but Grandma Medicine's eyes lit up and shot at Yunwoo. However, when she saw that plain, strange face, she slightly furrowed her forehead. How come their voices are so much alike? But she's not her. At this moment, there was a knock at the door. Cloud Murong glimpsed at Yunwoo with a frown, turned his head aside and looked in the direction of the person who had just walked inside. "Your lordship, Master Nangong said that you won the bid for this 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma. He asked me to send it here." The teenage girl carrying the snow Ganoderma said respectfully, put the snow Ganoderma on the table and waited on the side. Apparently, she was waiting for him to pay 300,000 taels. Cloud Murong twisted his head aside and looked sideways at Yunwoo. As if having just recalled this, Yunwoo raised her head and looked at Cloud Murong, smiling, "Your lordship, I bid for this for Venerable Mistress Murong. I hate to bother you, but the price is 300,000 taels of silver." This remark instantly made Cloud Murong's face darken. She bid for this thing for his mother. 300,000 taels. Was this woman playing him? He had never said anything from start to finish, and he didn't even know her. She was with Nangong-yi. Was that Nangong-yi by any chance? It seems as if your lordship doesn't know that this 1,000-year-old snow Ganoderma can prolong people's lives. You begrudge paying mere 300,000 taels for your own mother. Yunwoo lifted her eyebrows and looked at him. Surprisingly, for some unknown reason, Cloud Murong appeared a little guilty. In fact, he would never begrudge buying things for his mother. It was just that, like most other people, he was here for the last lot, which was usually the most precious. But this woman suddenly told him that she won the bid for this snow Ganoderma at 300,000 taels on his behalf, which was several times higher than the actual value of this snow Ganoderma. Wasn't she treating him as a sucker? Lady, don't think that you're eligible to make trouble out of nothing just because you're a friend of Grand Maester's son. Those words you just said were treasonable and heretical, and now. Cloud Murong said in a deep voice. Your lordship, even if I did anything displeasing to you, just pay the money first. Can't you see that the girl is still waiting? Even I feel embarrassed watching this. Yunwoo said with a grin on her plain-looking face. But judging by her expression, she wasn't embarrassed at all. With a frown, Cloud Morong glimpsed at the teenage girl standing on the side and then glanced at that unreasonable woman, feeling actually embarrassed. It seemed as if he really was unwilling to buy this thing for his mother. You don't have enough money. If that's the case, I'll go and ask Nangong Yi to pay for it first. You can repay him later. After saying this, Yunwoo stood up from the stool, planning to go to Nangong Yi's room. With a sullen look on his face, Cloud Morong reprimanded in a low voice, "Sit down." How could he refuse to pay the money after she said those words? It was no longer merely about his face, but also about his status and dignity. Cloud Morong darted an angry glance at Yunwoo, turned his head aside and said to the guards standing on the side, "Go with that girl and pay the money." Yes. The guard nodded and soon left with the teenage girl. Finally, there were only 3 people in the room. Cloud Morong said with a sudden, cold face, "Lady, are you playing a trick on me? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.